The lawyer called and said, "Your wife changed the will 3 days ago." The phone rang when I still wasn't entirely sure where I was. Hospital room, white walls, monitors beeping with mechanical insistence, tubes in my arms, the metallic taste of fear in my mouth. I fumbled for the phone on the bedside table. My hands shook. Everything shook. "David?" The voice was urgent, hushed. "David, it's Peter Jenkins. Thank God you're awake. Listen to me very carefully. Don't sign anything. Do you understand? Don't sign a single document." Peter Jenkins. My attorney for 20 years. The man who'd handled every contract, every business deal, every legal matter since I'd opened my first auto shop in 2003. His voice never trembled. It was trembling now. "Peter." My throat felt raw, scraped. What happened? "You've been in the ICU for 3 days. Massive heart attack. But that's not why I'm calling." He paused. In that pause, I heard something that made my blood run colder than the IV drip in my veins. "Your wife came to my office yesterday. She brought documents, a new will, medical power of attorney. She wanted me to notarize them immediately. Said it was urgent, that we needed to prepare in case the worst happened." The monitor beside my bed started beeping faster. A nurse glanced through the window, concerned. I told her I couldn't notarize anything without you present," Peter continued. "She became very insistent, said you'd already discussed it, that you'd want this. David, I've known you 2 decades. Something was wrong. So I'm calling you now and I'm telling you, whatever anyone brings you to sign, don't. Not until I get there. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comment." I lay there after he hung up, staring at the acoustic tiles in the ceiling. 72 hours. 3 days of my life. Gone. What had happened in those 3 days? 5 days earlier, I'd been standing in my office at Coleman's Auto Service, looking at expansion plans with Mark Thornton, my business partner and CFO. The sun was setting over San Diego, painting the sky the color of copper. Beautiful evening, the kind that made you grateful for everything you'd built. "These numbers are solid, David." Mark tapped the spreadsheet on my laptop. "If we open the 4th location in Carlsbad, we're looking at 30% growth within 18 months. Maybe more." I'd met Mark 12 years ago at a business networking event. He was younger than me by 14 years, sharp with numbers, ambitious but not reckless. When I'd needed a financial director, he'd been the obvious choice. Over the years, he'd become more than an employee. He'd become a partner, 20% equity in the business. Not just someone who worked for me, but someone who worked with me. "The lease terms are favorable," I said, reviewing the details again. "Location's perfect, high traffic, good demographics." "Then let's do it." Mark smiled, that confident smile that had helped close 100 deals. "You've built something incredible here, partner."
3 locations, 28 employees, 2.3 million in annual revenue. Time to make it 4. 2.3 million. It sounded impressive when you said it out loud.
When you'd started with a single garage and a dream, it sounded like a miracle. I'd grown up in a working-class neighborhood in El Cajon, watching my father struggle to make ends meet as a mechanic. He'd worked for other people his entire life, never quite scraping together enough to open his own place. He'd died at 57, worn out, used up, still fixing other people's cars in someone else's shop. I'd promised myself it would be different for me, and it had been. 40 years of 16-hour days. 40 years of choosing work over vacations, over hobbies, over everything except family. I'd built Coleman's Auto from nothing into something that would outlast me. Something that would provide for Elizabeth, for our sons Jason and Thomas, for whatever came next. "Let's schedule a meeting with the Carlsbad property owner," I told Mark. "Next week. I want to see the space again before we commit." "You got it." Mark gathered his papers. "And David, you should take Elizabeth somewhere nice this weekend. You've been working too hard. Even I can see that." He was right. I was tired, more tired than usual. A heaviness in my chest that I'd been ignoring for weeks, maybe months. Stress, I'd told myself. Too much coffee. Not enough sleep. The price of success. I should have known better. That night I came home to the smell of garlic and herbs wafting from the kitchen. Our house in La Jolla sat on a hillside with a view of the Pacific, 3,000 square feet of memories. We'd bought it 25 years ago, when the boys were young and Elizabeth still looked at me like I'd hung the moon. "David," she appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. Elizabeth Coleman at 58 was still beautiful, silver threading through her dark hair, lines around her eyes that I'd watched develop year by year. 35 years of marriage. A lifetime. "I'm making your favorite," she said. "Osso buco. Thought we could have a nice dinner, just the two of us." Something warm settled in my chest. When had we last done this? Just the two of us. No business calls, no interruptions. "That sounds perfect, honey." We ate by candlelight, talking about small things. The neighbor's new landscaping. A restaurant Elizabeth wanted to try in La Jolla Village. Comfortable conversation. The kind that comes after 3.5 decades together. Then she set down her wine glass and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "David, I've been thinking we should update our will. It's been, 10 years since we looked at it." The osso buco suddenly felt heavy in my stomach. "Update it how?" "Just modernize it. Make sure everything's in order. We're not getting any younger." She reached across the table, took my hand. "I worry about you, working so hard. What if something happened? I want to make sure I'd know what to do, how to handle the business, the accounts, everything." "Nothing's going to happen, Elizabeth. But if it did," she squeezed my hand. "Please, for my peace of mind, let's just make sure everything's current. Your brother Richard could help. He handles this kind of thing all the time." Richard Holmes, Elizabeth's brother, 55, family law attorney with a practice in downtown San Diego. I'd never particularly liked Richard. He had that lawyer smoothness, that way of saying things that sounded helpful but felt like manipulation. But he was family, and Elizabeth trusted him. "All right," I said, because it seemed harmless. "We'll look at it." She smiled, relaxed. "Thank you, honey. I feel better already." That conversation, that single moment of agreeing to something that seemed so reasonable, so innocent. I'd replay it 1,000 times in the weeks to come, searching for signs I'd missed, clues I'd overlooked. But that night, I saw nothing wrong. I finished my dinner, helped Elizabeth clean up, went to bed beside her like I had for 35 years. I should have known better. 2 days later, Jason stopped by the house. Our older son, 32, with Elizabeth's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. He'd always been the charming one, the social one, the one who could talk his way into or out of anything. I was in the garage, organizing tools when his Audi pulled into the driveway. Expensive car for someone who'd bounced between jobs for the past 5 years. But Jason always landed on his feet, always had some new opportunity, some promising venture. "Hey, Dad." He leaned against the workbench, hands in his pockets. "Got a minute?" "Always. What's going on?" He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I've been looking at this franchise opportunity. Coffee shop chain, really innovative model, killer locations. There's one available in Encinitas. Perfect spot, right on the Coast Highway." Here it came. The ask. There was always an ask. "The franchise fee is $90,000, Jason continued. "But I've got connections. I can negotiate it down. Thing is, I need to move fast. Like, this week. Before someone else grabs it. $90,000. Said as casually as $90. "Jason, I know, it's a lot. But Dad, this is it. This is the opportunity I've been waiting for. Stable business, proven model, real potential. I'm 32 years old. I need to build something, like you did, like I did, by working 16-hour days, by risking everything I had, by building it from nothing with my own hands. Not by asking my father for $90,000. But he was my son, and I'd spent 32 years trying to give him opportunities I'd never had. "Let me see the business plan," I said. "The franchise disclosure document, financial projections, everything." "Absolutely. I'll email it tonight." He brightened. "Thanks, Dad. I knew you'd understand. This is going to change everything." He left 20 minutes later, energized, confident. I stood in the garage, tools in hand, feeling that heaviness in my chest again. The weight of being needed, the weight of being the solution
to everyone else's problems. That night, I reviewed the documents Jason sent. They were professional, detailed, impressive. The kind of presentation that looked solid until you dug deeper and realized it was all projections, all optimism, all best-case scenarios that never actually materialized. I'd seen 100 of these over the years. From Jason, from friends, from business acquaintances who wanted investment capital. They all looked good on paper. They rarely worked in reality. But this was my son. I called him the next morning. I'll give you $80,000. That's my final offer. And Jason, this is it. The last time. You need to make this work. I will, Dad. I promise. Thank you. You won't regret this. I already regretted it. But what father wants to watch his son struggle when he has the means to help? I transferred the money that afternoon. $80,000 from my business account to Jason's personal account. Elizabeth found out that evening, smiled warmly. You're a good father, David. Not every man would do that for his son. Maybe not every man should. The heart attack came 3 days later. I was at the office, reviewing inventory reports when the pain started. Not dramatic at first. Just pressure in my chest, like someone was sitting on it. Tightness in my jaw. My left arm felt strange, heavy. Mark? I called out. My voice sounded distant. He appeared in my doorway immediately. David! Jesus, you look gray. Are you? The world tilted. The floor rushed up to meet me. Or maybe I fell toward it. I couldn't tell. Mark's face hovered above me, mouth moving, saying something I couldn't hear over the roaring in my ears. The last thing I remember clearly was the ceiling of my office, the fluorescent lights, Mark's hand on my shoulder. His expression wasn't worried, wasn't panicked. It was calculating. Then nothing. 72 hours of nothing. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Beeping, chemical smell, voices distant and distorted. Still unconscious. 48 hours. We'll need to make decisions. Elizabeth, I know this is difficult, but I tried to move, to speak, to open my eyes. Nothing worked. My body was a prison, and I was trapped inside. Listening to voices discuss me like I wasn't there, like I was already gone. Time had no meaning. Hours or days could have passed. The voices came and went. Sometimes Elizabeth, crying softly. Sometimes a doctor, professional and distant. Sometimes someone else. A man's voice I almost recognized but couldn't place. Then finally, painfully, my eyes opened. The hospital room swam into focus. Afternoon light through Venetian blinds. Monitors, displaying numbers I didn't understand. My throat was raw. My arms ached. My chest felt like someone had parked a truck on it. I was alive. The nurse noticed immediately, hurried over with practiced efficiency. Mr. Coleman, can you hear me? Don't try to talk. You've been intubated. Your throat will be sore. Just nod if you understand. I nodded, or tried to. The movement felt enormous. I'm going to page your doctor. Your wife is in the waiting room. She'll be so relieved. She left. I lay there, trying to piece together what had happened. Heart attack. ICU. 3 days. Where had those days gone? What had I missed? That's when the phone rang. Peter Jenkins, my attorney, warning me not to sign anything, telling me Elizabeth had tried to change my will while I was unconscious. While I was unconscious. I stared at the phone after he hung up, my hand still shaking, my mind trying to process what I'd just heard. Elizabeth had brought documents to Peter. A new will, medical power of attorney. She'd wanted them notarized immediately, while I lay in the ICU with tubes down my throat. Why? The door opened. Elizabeth rushed in, her face the picture of wifely concern, hair slightly disheveled, eyes red from crying, no makeup. She looked like she'd been through hell. David! Oh, thank God you're awake! She grabbed my hand, pressed it to her cheek. Tears streamed down her face. Real tears, or what looked like real tears. I was so scared. They said you might not wake up, that the damage might be too severe, and I couldn't lose you. I couldn't. I looked at her. Really looked at her. 35 years of marriage. 2 children together. A lifetime of shared memories, shared struggles, shared victories. The woman holding my hand, crying against my palm.
was a stranger. "Water," I croaked. My voice barely worked. She poured from the plastic pitcher, held the cup to my lips with shaking hands. I drank, the cold water painful on my raw throat. "The doctors said it was massive," Elizabeth said, sitting in the chair beside my bed, still holding my hand. "You almost died, David. If Mark hadn't been there, if he hadn't called 911 immediately." She shook her head, unable to continue. "Mark, my business partner. He'd been there when I collapsed. Called the ambulance. Probably saved my life. Or had he?" That calculating expression on his face. That last thing I'd seen before. The darkness swallowed me. What had I seen in that moment? What had my subconscious registered that my conscious mind had missed? "How long?" I managed. 3 days. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. The doctors said your heart just gave out. Too much stress, too much work, too much everything." Her voice broke. "I kept telling you to slow down, to take care of yourself, but you never listened. 3 days. 72 hours of my life. Gone. And in those 72 hours, my wife had tried to change my will." "Elizabeth." Each word hurt. Peter called. Her hand tightened on mine. Just slightly. Just enough. "Peter, your attorney?" "Why would he call?" "He said you came to his office. With documents." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elizabeth's face went very still, very composed. The tears stopped. Her grip on my hand loosened. Yes, I did." She stood, walked to the window, her back to me. "David, they told me you might not wake up, that I needed to be prepared. Your brother-in-law, Richard, suggested we make sure everything was in order, just in case. I wasn't trying to do anything wrong." "What documents?" She turned. Her eyes were dry now. "A new will, medical power of attorney, things that would let me handle affairs if the worst happened." "David, I was trying to protect us. Protect what you've built. Protect what I'd built, or claim it. I want to see them." "What?" "The documents you wanted Peter to notarize. I want to see them." Something flickered across her face. Fear, anger, calculation. It was gone too quickly to identify. "David, you just woke up. You need to rest. We can discuss business matters later. Now." We looked at each other across the hospital room. 35 years of marriage, hanging in the balance. In that moment, I saw it clearly. The mask she'd been wearing. So perfect I'd never noticed it wasn't her real face. It slipped, just for a second. Just long enough. "I don't have them here," she said finally. "They're at home. I'll bring them tomorrow." "Fine." But we both knew she wouldn't. We both knew everything had changed. The question was why? Why had she tried to change my will while I lay dying? What was in those documents that couldn't wait for me to wake up? What had my wife been planning? Elizabeth left an hour later, promising to return in the morning with clothes, toiletries, the documents I'd asked for. She kissed my forehead. Her lips felt cold. When she was gone, I called Peter back. "David, thank God. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." "Peter, I need you to find out what was in those documents. Everything. Word for word. I can't disclose attorney-client. She's not your client. I am. And if she was trying to change my will without my knowledge or consent, I need to know what she was planning to change it to." Silence on the other end. Then, "I'll see what I can do. David, be careful. If she was willing to do this while you were unconscious, there's no telling what else she might be willing to do." That night I lay awake in my hospital bed, listening to the monitor's beep, watching the IV drip its steady rhythm. I thought about $80,000 I'd given Jason, about expansion plans for a 4th auto shop, about Osso Bucco by candlelight and Elizabeth's hand in mine, about Mark's face, calculating, in the moment before I collapsed, about 3 days of my life that had vanished into unconsciousness, while people I trusted made plans around my hospital bed. Sleep, when it finally came, was thin and troubled. I dreamed of drowning, of suffocating, of screaming for help, while everyone I loved stood on the shore, watching, doing nothing. I woke at 3 a.m. to voices in the hallway. Low, urgent. One of them was Elizabeth. The other was male, but not a doctor. I knew that voice. Mark Thornton, my business partner. They were outside my room at 3 in the morning, talking in whispers. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Fear, frustration, planning. "He wasn't supposed to wake up," one of them said. I couldn't tell which. The other responded, words muffled but urgent. Then footsteps, moving away down the hallway. I lay in the darkness, my heart monitor beeping faster, faster, faster. The nurse looked in, concerned, but I waved her away. He wasn't supposed to wake up. Who wasn't supposed to wake up? I knew the answer. I'd known it since Peter's call. Maybe I'd known it for longer, in that place beneath conscious thought where we store truths too terrible to acknowledge. My wife had been planning for me to die, and she hadn't been planning alone. The question wasn't whether they'd betrayed me. The question was how deep the betrayal went, how long it had been happening, how many people I trusted were part of it, and what, exactly, they'd been planning to do with my life's work after I was gone. I picked up my phone, typed a message to Peter Jenkins. "We need to meet. Tomorrow. Bring everything. And, Peter, bring a recording device. I think I'm going to need evidence." His response came back immediately, despite the hour. "I'll be there at 9 a.m.
Don't let anyone else in that room until I arrive." I set the phone down, closed my eyes. The beeping of the monitors was steady, rhythmic, proof that I was still alive, despite whatever plans had been made for me.
I'd spent 40 years building Coleman's auto service from nothing. I'd spent 35 years married to Elizabeth, building a life, a family, a future together. In 3 days of unconsciousness, it had all revealed itself to be something else. A lie, a scheme, a long con that was just now coming into focus. But they'd made one crucial mistake. I'd woken up.
And now I was going to find out exactly what they'd been planning to do with my life, my business, and my money after they made sure I couldn't wake up again.
Peter Jenkins arrived at exactly 9 o'clock, carrying a leather briefcase and an expression I'd never seen on him before. Grim, almost angry. "Before we start," he said, closing the door behind him and pulling a chair close to my bed, "I need you to understand something. What I'm about to tell you is going to hurt. It's going to change how you see people you've loved for decades. Are you ready for that?" I'd been awake since 5, watching the sun rise over San Diego through my hospital window, thinking about whispered voices in the hallway at 3 in the morning. He wasn't supposed to wake up. "Tell me everything." Peter opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Elizabeth came to my office 4 days ago. That was day 2 of your unconsciousness. She had Richard with her. Her brother. Yes, they brought documents that Richard had prepared. A new will, a durable power of attorney, and a medical directive. She wanted all 3 notarized immediately." He paused. "David, I've been practicing law for 30 years. I've seen people do desperate things when a loved one is dying. But this was different. How? She wasn't grieving. She was efficient, businesslike.
She had talking points prepared about why these documents were necessary, why they needed to be executed immediately, why waiting for you to wake up, if you woke up, would create problems. The monitor beside my bed registered my heart rate climbing.
Peter noticed, paused. "I'm fine," I said. "Keep going." He pulled out a photocopy. I couldn't give her the notarization she wanted, but I did take copies before she left. The new will is comprehensive. I took the papers with shaking hands. The language was dense, legal, designed to confuse. But certain phrases jumped out, clear as daylight. "All business interests in Coleman's Auto Service, LLC, including the decedent's 75% ownership stake, shall pass in their entirety to Elizabeth Marie Coleman. 75%. Not split between Elizabeth and the boys. Not placed in trust. Everything to her. Elizabeth Marie Coleman shall have sole discretion to sell, transfer, or otherwise dispose of said business interests without approval from any other party. She could sell the business. The day after I died, she could sell everything I'd built. Mark Thornton shall serve as transition consultant for all business matters, with compensation of $200,000 payable within 90 days of the decedent's death. $200,000 to Mark, my business partner, for consulting during the transition. There's more, Peter said quietly. Look at the life insurance beneficiaries. I flipped to the next page. All life insurance proceeds, totaling approximately $500,000, shall be paid directly to Elizabeth Marie Coleman. $500,000. The policy I'd maintained for years, intended to provide for my family if something happened to me. All of it to Elizabeth, not split with the boys, not placed in trust for grandchildren, all to her. And the medical directive, Peter continued, pulling out another document. This is the one that really concerned me. I read it. The words blurred together at first, then sharpened into terrible clarity.
In the event the principal is unable to communicate and medical professionals determine that recovery is unlikely or would result in permanent incapacitation, the agent shall have authority to refuse or withdraw life-sustaining treatment, including, but not limited to, mechanical ventilation, artificial nutrition, and hydration. Refuse or withdraw life-sustaining treatment.
They could have unplugged me, I said. My voice sounded hollow. If you'd been unconscious for 72 hours and a doctor had said your prognosis was poor, yes, Elizabeth would have had complete authority to end life support. Peter's face was granite. David, the timing is what troubles me. She came to my office on day 2. This document would have given her authority to make that decision on day 3. 72 hours. The room felt smaller, colder. Where is Elizabeth now? I don't know. I haven't seen her since I called you yesterday. But David, there's something else you need to know. I did some research after she left my office. That offshore company, the one receiving payments from your business, the one Mark set up. What about it? It's registered in the Cayman Islands, created 11 months ago. The beneficial owners are listed as Mark Thornton and, he paused, Elizabeth Coleman. The world stopped. Say that again. Your wife and your business partner own an offshore company together. They created it 11 months ago. And your business has been sending payments to it, $340,000, over the past 8 months. Mark and Elizabeth, partners. Not in my business, in their own business. A secret business, funded with money from the company I'd built with my own hands. How long? I asked. The question was barely a whisper. How long have they been planning this? At minimum, 11 months, possibly longer. The offshore company is when they formalized it, but Peter hesitated. David, people don't create structures like this overnight. This required planning, coordination, trust. Trust. My wife and my business partner, trusting each other, while I trusted both of them. I need you to check something else, I said. My voice was steady now, cold. Jason, my son, I gave him $80,000 5 days ago, 3 days before my heart attack. Check where that money went. Peter made a note. I'll have my investigator look into it. David, what are you thinking? What was I thinking? I was thinking about Elizabeth's hand in mine, tears on her face. I was thinking about Mark's calculating expression as I collapsed. I was thinking about Jason asking for money, about convenient timing, about a franchise opportunity that needed to happen immediately. I was thinking about 35 years of marriage and how long it takes to plan a murder that looks like natural causes. I'm thinking, I said slowly, that my heart attack was very convenient for some people. I'm thinking that maybe it wasn't just bad luck and stress. Peter's expression didn't change. He didn't tell me I was being paranoid. He didn't tell me I was wrong. He just nodded. We need to be very careful, David. If what you're suggesting is true, if they were planning this, then they're going to be extremely unhappy that you woke up. You've disrupted their timeline. Good. No, not good. Because desperate people do desperate things. He leaned forward. I'm going to arrange for a security guard outside your room. Someone from a private firm I trust. And I'm going to have a forensic accountant go through every transaction in your business for the past 2 years. We need to know exactly how much they've taken and where it went. Do it! One more thing. Peter pulled out a small digital recorder. I want you to start documenting everything, every conversation, every visitor, every strange occurrence. If this ends up in court, and, David, it will end up in court, we need evidence, not just financial records, but proof of intent of conspiracy. I took the recorder. It was small, innocuous, the kind of thing that could slip into a pocket, hide under a pillow. What if they don't come back? I asked. What if Elizabeth knows you called me, knows the plan is blown, and she just disappears? She won't disappear. Neither will Mark. Because right now they don't know what you know. Elizabeth thinks I refused to notarize the documents because of procedural concerns, not because I suspected anything. She thinks you're still in the dark. Peter stood. Keep it that way. Act normal. Act like a man who had a heart attack and is grateful to be alive. Let them think they still have time to salvage this, while we gather evidence. Exactly. After Peter left, I lay in bed, holding the recorder, looking at the photocopies of documents my wife had tried to have notarized while I was unconscious. Documents that would have given her everything. Documents that, combined with a medical directive, could have ended my life legally, cleanly, with no questions asked. My phone buzzed. Text message from Elizabeth. On my way. Bringing you fresh clothes and breakfast. Love you. Love you. I looked at those 2 words for a long time. When had they stopped meaning what I thought they meant? When had I love you become code for I'm waiting for you to die? I typed back, thank you, honey. Can't wait to see you. Then I turned on the recorder and slipped it under my pillow. Elizabeth arrived 30 minutes later, carrying a duffel bag and a paper sack that smelled like coffee and pastries. She looked better than yesterday. Hair done, makeup perfect, dressed in the cream-colored blouse I'd bought her for Christmas. She looked like the woman I'd married 35 years ago. She looked like a stranger wearing my wife's face. You have more color today, she said, kissing my forehead. How do you feel? Tired, confused. The doctors said I'll need cardiac rehab, lifestyle changes. I accepted the coffee she handed me. Elizabeth, I've been thinking about what you said, about updating our will. Maybe you were right. Her hand froze, just for a second, holding a pastry. Oh, I almost died. That's real now, not just theoretical. We should make sure everything's organized. That you'd be taken care of if I let the sentence trail off. Vulnerable. She sat in the chair beside my bed. David, we don't need to talk about this now. You need to focus on recovering. But I want to. It's important to me. You shouldn't have to worry about business matters if something happens. You should be able to grieve, not deal with lawyers and accountants. I took her hand. Under my pillow, the recorder captured everything. What did you and Richard put in those documents? I want to understand. She pulled her hand away gently, stood, walked to the window. Classic deflection. I'd seen her do it 1,000 times when she didn't want to discuss something. It was just standard estate planning, making sure assets transfer smoothly. Richard said it was important to have everything current. Did Mark help with the business valuation? Another freeze. Barely perceptible. Mark? Why would Mark be involved? Well, he's the CFO. He'd know the company's worth better than anyone. I just thought, if you were planning for contingencies. I let it hang there, innocent, curious. Yes, I did ask Mark for some information. Just general numbers. For the documentation. She turned back to face me. David, why are you asking all this? Are you upset that I tried to handle things while you were sick? Was I upset? I looked at my wife, standing in the morning light streaming through the hospital window. 35 years of marriage, 2 children, a house in La Jolla, a lifetime of shared meals, shared beds, shared dreams. Or what I'd thought were shared dreams. I'm not upset, I lied. I'm grateful. You were trying to protect our family. That's what partners do. Partners. The word felt like broken glass in my mouth. She relaxed slightly. I'm glad you understand. Richard said you might be angry, but I told him you'd see it was for the best. For everyone. For everyone. Everyone except me. Elizabeth, did the doctors talk to you about my prognosis while I was unconscious? Of course. Every day. They said. She paused, choosing words carefully. They said the damage was extensive, that even if you woke up there might be complications, cognitive issues, physical limitations. They wanted me to be prepared for the possibility that you might not be the same person you were before. And if I wasn't, if I woke up but couldn't work, couldn't run the business, then we'd adapt. I'd take care of you. We'd figure it out together. She said it smoothly, practiced, but her eyes told a different story. Her eyes said, Then you'd be a burden. Then you'd be in the way. What about the business? If I couldn't run it, Mark could handle things. He basically runs it already, doesn't he? You're always saying he's indispensable. She smiled. We'd be fine, David. You don't need to worry. Mark could handle things. Mark, who'd been funneling $340,000 to an offshore company he owned with my wife. Mark, who was named in her secret will as a $200,000 consultant. Mark, whose face I'd seen calculating, planning in the moment before I collapsed. Mark could handle things. That's reassuring, I said. I'm lucky to have people I can trust. She came back to the bed, kissed me again. You are, and I'm lucky to have you. When I thought I might lose you. Her voice broke, perfectly timed. I couldn't bear it, David. You're my whole world. My whole world. My whole ATM machine. My whole life insurance policy. My whole convenient heart attack. I love you too, honey. She stayed for another hour, fussing over my blankets, adjusting my pillows, playing the devoted wife. When she finally left, promising to return that evening with dinner, I pulled out the recorder and stopped it. Every word captured, every deflection, every careful phrase, every lie wrapped in concern. I called Peter. She just left. I got it all. Good, David. My investigator found something about Jason. That $80,000 you gave him. It didn't go to any franchise. It went into an account at Wells Fargo, sat there for 2 days, then got transferred to an offshore account in the Caymans. My son, my own son, the same account receiving payments from the business. No, a different account, but same registration jurisdiction, same corporate structure, same setup. David. Peter's voice was heavy. Jason's involved. He's been part of this. I closed my eyes. $80,000. Not for a coffee shop franchise. For a payoff. For keeping quiet. For playing his role in whatever plan Elizabeth and Mark had constructed. How deep does this go? I don't know yet, but we're going to find out. The forensic accountant is coming tomorrow. We'll have a complete picture within 48 hours. Peter, I want to know everything. Every transaction. Every transfer, every person involved. I don't care what it costs. Understood. David, there's one more thing. The investigator checked hospital records. Mark Thornton was here 4 times while you were unconscious. Not as a visitor. He had private meetings with Elizabeth in the family consultation room. 4 times. Planning, coordinating, making sure their story was straight. What were they discussing? The hospital doesn't record private consultations. But the timing is interesting. The first meeting was 3 hours after you arrived in the ICU, before the doctors had even stabilized you. 3 hours after my heart attack, my wife and my business partner were having private meetings, not sitting by my bedside, not praying for my recovery, meeting, planning. They thought I was going to die, I said. They were preparing for it. Yes, and David, one of those meetings included Richard Holmes, your wife, your business partner, and your brother-in-law, all meeting together while you were on life support. 3 of them. A conspiracy, not just a betrayal. I looked around my hospital room. Monitors, IV drips, get-well cards on the windowsill from business associates who didn't know that the people closest to me had been planning my death. I need to get out of here, I said. How soon can I be discharged? The doctors want you here for at least another week. Cardiac monitoring, rehab assessment. No, they want me here, vulnerable, accessible. Peter, listen to me. If Elizabeth has medical power of attorney, she doesn't. You never signed anything. But she tried to get it. She knows how to fake my signature. How hard would it be for her to present forged documents to the hospital, claim authority, make decisions about my care? Silence on the other end. Then, I'll talk to the hospital administration. Make sure they understand that only you can authorize medical decisions. But David, you need to be careful. If you discharge yourself too early, you could have another heart attack. And next time, he didn't finish the sentence. Next time I might not wake up. Next time Elizabeth would have her documents ready. Next time Mark would be there to make sure things went according to plan. Then we move fast, I said. How quickly can you put together protection for my assets? A revocable trust? 3 weeks. Irrevocable trust with full asset protection? 6 to 8 weeks. Too long. Far too long. What if I just change the will? Emergency amendment? That protects things after you die. It doesn't protect you while you're alive. And David, I'm more worried about you while you're alive. His voice dropped. We're talking about people who've already tried to forge documents to control your estate. People who own offshore companies where they've hidden hundreds of thousands of dollars.
People who were planning what to do with your business while you were unconscious. These aren't people who are going to politely wait for you to die of natural causes, now that their first plan failed. The room felt very cold.
You think they'll try again? I think they've invested almost a year in this scheme. I think they've already stolen at least $340,000, probably more. I think they've involved multiple people, created complex financial structures, forged legal documents. That's not the behavior of people who give up easily. He was right, of course he was right. So what do? You play dead, metaphorically. You act weak, recovering, confused. You don't let them know you suspect anything. You definitely don't confront them. Peter's voice became steel. And you let me build an airtight legal fortress around you while we gather enough evidence to bury them all. How long? Give me 2 weeks. 2 weeks to get the forensic analysis, document everything, set up protection. Can you do that? Can you act normal for 2 weeks while sleeping next to a woman who tried to have you killed? Could I? Could I smile at Elizabeth over breakfast, discuss business with Mark, pretend I didn't know my own son had taken a payoff to betray me? I thought about 40 years of building Coleman's auto service, about every 16-hour day, every sacrifice, every choice to work instead of play with my children because I was building something for them, for their future. And they'd been planning to take it, to take everything, to erase me and split up the pieces of my life like dividing an estate sale. I can do it, I said. 2 weeks, but Peter, after those 2 weeks, I want to watch them fall. You will. I promise you, David, you will. That night, Elizabeth returned with Thai food from my favorite restaurant. We ate together, her sitting beside my bed, talking about neighborhood gossip, about friends who'd called to ask about me, about how many flowers and cards had arrived at the house. She was so good at it, the devoted wife act. 35 years of practice had made her perfect. Mark called, she said, spearing a piece of pad thai. He wanted to know if you'd be well enough for a business meeting next week. There are some contracts that need signatures. I told him probably not, that you needed to focus on recovery. Actually, I said, I'd like to see Mark, maybe this weekend, here at the hospital. I want to know how things are going at the shops. She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. David, you shouldn't be thinking about work. I can't help it. It's my life's work, Elizabeth. I need to know it's in good hands. I smiled weakly. Besides, it'll make me feel better. Make me feel useful instead of just lying here. She set down her fork. If you're sure, I'll tell him to come Sunday. Perfect. After she left, I typed a message to Peter. Mark coming Sunday. We'll record everything. His response. Good. Remember, play weak, play grateful. Let him feel safe. I set the phone down and looked at the ceiling tiles, counting them for the 100th time. 2 weeks, Peter had said. 2 weeks of pretending everything was normal while we built our case. 2 weeks of living with the knowledge that the people I'd loved most had been planning my death. I could do it. I would do it. Because at the end of those 2 weeks, they were going to learn something about David Coleman they'd somehow forgotten over the years of taking my money, my trust, my love. I'd built a $2.3 million business from nothing. I'd survived in a competitive market for 40 years. I was a fighter. I'd always been a fighter. They'd just mistaken patience for weakness. That was their first mistake. Trying to kill me was their second. I wouldn't give them a chance for a third. Sunday morning arrived with fog rolling in from the Pacific, turning La Jolla into something gray and indistinct. Appropriate weather for what was coming. I'd spent the previous 2 days preparing. Not physically. The doctors were still monitoring my heart, adjusting medications, warning me about stress. But mentally, I'd been building a character, the grateful survivor, the weakened businessman. The man who still trusted the people around him because he was too sick, too tired, too grateful to be alive to see the truth. It was the hardest role I'd ever played. Peter had come by Friday evening after Elizabeth left, bringing equipment. Not just the small recorder. That stayed under my pillow, but a more sophisticated setup. A pen that recorded video and audio. A button camera he'd sewn into the collar of the shirt Elizabeth had brought me. Technology I'd only seen in movies. The pen stays on the bedside table, pointing at whoever sits in that chair, Peter had instructed, arranging everything with precision. The button camera captures your perspective. Between the two, we'll have complete coverage. Video, audio, angles, everything. Is this legal? You're in your own hospital room.
California is a two-party consent state for recordings, but there's an exception for situations where you have a reasonable expectation that crimes might be discussed or planned.
Given what we already know about the forged documents and the offshore accounts, we're well within legal boundaries. He'd looked at me seriously. David, what we're doing here is building a prosecution case, not just a civil case. If we do this right, we're not just protecting your assets. We're putting people in prison. Prison, my wife, my business partner, possibly my own son. The thought should have hurt more than it did. Maybe I was still in shock. Or maybe, after everything I'd learned, the people they'd revealed themselves to be were strangers anyway. Strangers who happened to share my name, my bed, my business. Mark arrived at exactly 10 o'clock. I heard his voice at the nurse's station, that confident tone he used with everyone. Charming, professional, the voice of a man people trusted with their money. The nurse showed him in. He was dressed casually. Expensive casual. Dark jeans, a button-down shirt that probably cost more than my first car, Italian leather shoes. Mark Thornton, 48 years old. Handsome in that polished way that comes from money and good genetics. The man I'd trusted with 20% of my business. The man I'd considered a friend. The man who'd been planning my death with my wife, David. He set down a briefcase and crossed to my bed, his expression perfectly calibrated. Concern, relief, warmth. Jesus, you scared us. When you went down in the office. He shook his head. I thought we'd lost you. The doctor said you saved my life, I said. My voice was weak, deliberately so. Calling 911 immediately, getting the ambulance there so fast. Thank you, Mark. I owe you everything. Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, calculation. It was gone too fast to read. You don't owe me anything, partner. We're in this together, remember? That's what partners do. He sat in the chair beside my bed, exactly where Peter's pen camera was pointed. Perfect positioning. How are you feeling? Really? Tired. Scared, if I'm honest. The doctors say I need to make major changes. Diet, exercise, stress management. They're talking about stepping back from work for months. I let that sink in. Maybe longer. Mark's face remained sympathetic, but I could see his mind working, calculating what my absence meant. Opportunity. Take whatever time you need. The business will be fine. Better than fine. He pulled papers from his briefcase. Actually, that's partly why I'm here. I wanted you to see the Q3 numbers. David, we had our best quarter ever. Revenue up 18%. Profit margins at 22%. The Carlsbad expansion looks even better now. He spread the papers on my bed table. Financial statements, projections, charts showing growth. It all looked impressive. It all looked legitimate. It was probably all lies. That's incredible, I said. Mark, I don't know what I'd do without you. Seriously, you've been running things so smoothly. It's what you pay me for. He smiled. But David, we need to talk about something important. While you were unconscious, Elizabeth and I discussed some contingencies. Nothing dramatic, just planning, in case things had gone differently. Here it came. The pitch. The setup. What kind of planning? Mark leaned forward, his expression becoming serious. Trustworthy. Look, I don't want to stress you out. That's the last thing you need right now. But the reality is you almost died. And when something like that happens, it exposes vulnerabilities. In the business, in estate planning, in everything. Elizabeth mentioned something about updating our will. Exactly. Smart woman, your wife. She understands these things. He pulled out another document. This is just a draft, nothing official, but I worked with Richard, Elizabeth's brother, the attorney, to put together a framework. It would ensure business continuity if anything happened to you. Smooth transition of ownership, management structure, all of it. I took the document with shaking hands. Real shaking this time, not performance. Because seeing it in black and white, seeing the formal legal language that described dismantling everything I'd built, made it visceral in a way the recordings and photocopies hadn't. Transition of ownership agreement. In the event of death or permanent incapacitation of David Coleman, 75% 75% ownership stake in Coleman's Auto Service. LLC shall transfer as follows: 50% to Elizabeth Coleman.
25% to Mark Thornton. 25% to Mark.
Not the 20% he already owned, an additional 25%. Combined with his existing stake, that would give him 45%, just shy of Elizabeth's 50%. Enough to run the business, not enough to overrule her.
Perfect partners. Mark Thornton shall assume role of Chief Executive Officer with full operational authority. Elizabeth Coleman shall retain controlling interest and final approval on major decisions regarding sale or dissolution of company assets.
There it was. Mark runs the day-to-day. Elizabeth controls the ultimate decisions, like selling the business to the highest bidder and splitting the proceeds. Déjà, this seems like you're getting a lot out of my death, Mark. I said it lightly, like a joke, but I watched his face. He laughed, actually laughed. I guess it does look that way on paper. But David, think about it practically. Right now, if something happened to you, Elizabeth would own 75% of a business she knows nothing about running. She'd either have to sell it, probably at a loss, to some corporate chain that would destroy everything you built, or hire professional management that wouldn't care about your legacy. This way, the business stays in the family. I continue running it like I have been. Everyone wins. Except I'm dead. Another laugh, more nervous this time. Well, yes, but this is only if something happens. Hopefully you'll recover fully and this document just sits in a drawer for the next 30 years. He leaned back. Elizabeth just wanted everything organized. You know how she is. Always planning, always preparing, always planning. For 11 months at minimum. Creating offshore companies, forging documents, calculating how much my life was worth to her. What about Jason and Thomas? I asked. My sons. They're not mentioned in this. Mark shifted slightly. Elizabeth felt it was important to keep the business separate from inheritance. Your personal assets would go to the boys through your regular will. The business would remain operational, rather than getting carved up in an estate dispute. He paused. Between you and me, David, you know Jason isn't exactly business-minded, and Thomas is up in Oregon teaching high school. Neither of them has shown any interest in auto service. This way protects what you've built. Protects what I'd built by giving it to my wife and business partner. The same two people who'd created an offshore company and funneled $340,000 into it. I need to think about this, I said. Of course. No rush. Take all the time you need. Mark gathered the papers, but left one copy on my table. Just consider it. And David, Elizabeth loves you. We all do. This isn't about anything except making sure you have peace of mind. Peace of mind. That's what you call sleeping with a man's wife and planning to steal his business. Peace of mind. Mark, can I ask you something? Anything. That consulting company we've been using. The one in the Cayman Islands. Summit Strategic Solutions, I think. The payments we've been making for, what was it? Systems optimization. I watched his face. Really watched it. The micro-expressions that most people miss. The slight widening of his pupils. The barely perceptible tightening around his mouth. The way his hand moved to his knee, then stopped, then moved again. Fear. Summit Strategic. Yeah, they've been doing network security audits. IT infrastructure consulting. Why? His voice stayed casual, but I could hear the edge underneath. Just curious. 340,000 seems like a lot for IT work. Is that normal? For the level of security we need, absolutely. We're handling customer data, payment processing, proprietary systems. Can't be too careful these days. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Why are you asking about this now? I've been lying here for days with nothing to do but think. About the business, about money, about everything. Just trying to understand where we are financially. We're solid, better than solid. Those reports I showed you. I know. Best quarter ever. I closed my eyes, playing exhausted. I'm sorry, Mark. My mind is all over the place. The medication, probably. Forget I asked. No worries. You've been through hell. Anyone would be scattered. He stood, picked up his briefcase. Listen, I should let you rest. But think about the transition document, okay? It really would give Elizabeth security, and you peace of mind. I will. And Mark, I opened my eyes, looked at him directly. Thank you for everything, for saving my life, for running the business, for being such a good friend. I don't know what I did to deserve a partner like you. For just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I saw something raw in his expression. Guilt, maybe, or contempt, or the simple calculation of a man who'd been pretending friendship for 12 years while planning betrayal. You gave me a chance when no one else would, he said quietly. 20% equity in a solid business. A real partnership. I haven't forgotten that, David. I never will. He left. The door clicked shut. I counted to 10, then pulled the recorder from under my pillow and stopped it. Every word captured. The ownership transition agreement. The admission about Summit Strategic Solutions. The whole performance. I texted Peter. Got it all. He brought documents. Wants me to sign over 25% more of the business to him. The response came back immediately. Don't sign anything. I'm sending the recordings to our forensic accountant and the investigator. David, we've got enough now for criminal charges. Wire fraud, conspiracy, possibly attempted murder depending on what the DA thinks. Criminal charges. My business partner facing federal prison. My phone buzzed again. This time a call from Elizabeth. Hi, honey, I answered, keeping my voice weak. From Elizabeth. Hi, honey, I answered, keeping my voice weak. David, Mark just called. He said he showed you the business transition documents. She sounded worried. Actual worry or performed worry. After 35 years, I couldn't tell anymore. Are you okay? I didn't want you stressed about this now, but Mark thought you should know we were planning for contingencies. It's fine. I understand. You were trying to protect everyone. I paused. Elizabeth, when you come tonight, can you bring Richard, your brother? I'd like to discuss the estate planning with him directly. Make sure I understand everything. Silence. Then, are you sure? You've been so tired. I'm sure. This is important. I need to get things in order. I let my voice crack slightly. I almost died, Elizabeth. I need to make sure you're taken care of if something happens. Oh, David. Her voice softened. Genuine emotion? Or the world's best actress? Nothing's going to happen. You're going to be fine. But yes, I'll bring Richard. We'll come together tonight. Around 7. Perfect. I love you, honey. I love you too. I hung up and stared at the phone. She was bringing Richard, the lawyer brother who drafted the fraudulent will, the third conspirator, in whatever plan they'd constructed. All three of them, together, in my hospital room tonight. I called Peter. They're coming tonight. All three of them. Elizabeth, Mark, and Richard. Jesus, David, that's... He stopped. Actually, that's perfect. That's conspiracy in action. If we can get them all in the same room, discussing the plan, coordinating their story, we'll have everything we need. Yes. But David, you need to be careful. 3 conspirators in one room with the man who can expose them. That's dangerous. I'm sending someone to be in the hospital, not in your room. That would spook them, but close, just in case. You think they'd try something? Here, in a hospital? I think people who've already committed multiple felonies to steal $2 million might not want to risk a witness who's starting to ask questions about offshore accounts. His voice was grim. How hard would it be for a patient with a recent heart attack to have complications, especially if his wife had medical power of attorney and the doctor thought the family was prepared for the worst?
The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees.
But I never signed the medical directive. David, these are people who were going to forge your will.
How hard do you think it would be for Elizabeth to forge a medical directive and present it to a sympathetic doctor who knows the family has been discussing end-of-life planning? He was right. Of course he was right.
What do? You record everything, like we planned. You play your role.
And if anything feels wrong, if they try to get the nurses to leave, if anyone suggests medical procedures, if they bring up any reason you should sign something immediately, you hit the call button and you don't stop hitting it until there are 5 people in that room.
Understood. Understood. David, we're almost there. 2 more days and I'll have the complete forensic analysis. 1 week and we'll have asset protection in place. You just need to hold on a little longer. After he hung up, I sat in the hospital bed, surrounded by monitors and IV drips, thinking about the meeting tonight. 3 people who'd betrayed me, who'd stolen from me, who'd planned my death, all coming together to coordinate their next move. They thought they were coming to comfort a weak, frightened man who just wanted to make sure his wife was taken care of. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. The afternoon passed slowly. Nurses came and went. A physical therapist arrived to discuss cardiac rehab. A hospital administrator reviewed discharge planning. Normal things. Safe things.
I ate lunch, watched television, without really seeing it, and planned. At 6:30, I texted Peter. Almost time. His response, my man is in place. Coffee shop across the hall. Looks like a visitor. Former FBI. If you need help, text me 911 and he'll be in your room in 15 seconds. At 6:45, I turned on all the recording devices. The pen on the bedside table, the button camera in my shirt collar, the audio recorder under my pillow. At 7 o'clock exactly, they arrived. Elizabeth came in first, wearing the dark blue dress she knew I loved. Hair perfect, makeup subtle. The grieving wife who'd spent days at her husband's bedside. Richard followed, carrying his attorney's briefcase. 55 years old, silver hair, expensive suit. He looked like what he was, a successful family law attorney who probably billed $400 an hour. Mark came last, having clearly coordinated their arrival. The 3 of them together, united. They had no idea every word they said was being recorded, every expression captured on video. Every moment of this meeting would be evidence. David. Elizabeth kissed my forehead, took the chair closest to my bed. How are you feeling? Better. Stronger. Ready to get things settled. I looked at Richard. Thank you for coming. I know this is Sunday evening. Family comes first, Richard said smoothly. He set his briefcase on the floor, pulled out a leather portfolio. Elizabeth told me you wanted to discuss estate planning. I think that's very wise. Recent health events often make people realize the importance of having affairs in order. Affairs in order. Such a polite way to describe stealing a dying man's business. Mark stood near the door, arms crossed, watching. He'd said he was coming alone, but of course he'd coordinated with Elizabeth. Of course they'd planned this together. I've been thinking about what Mark showed me this morning, I said. The business transition document. And Elizabeth, you mentioned the will updates you'd discussed with Peter. I paused, let them wait. I want to understand everything. Walk me through it. What exactly were you planning if I'd died? The 3 of them exchanged glances. Quick, coordinated. They'd rehearsed this. Richard opened his portfolio. David, the goal is simple. Protect what you've built while providing security for Elizabeth. Right now, your will is outdated. It splits assets evenly between Elizabeth and your sons, with the business going into a trust that would require agreement from multiple parties to make any decisions. It's a recipe for deadlock and dissolution. So, what's the alternative? Clean transfer of business to people who can run it. Elizabeth gets controlling interest because she's your wife and primary beneficiary. Mark gets operational control because he's the only person who knows the business well enough to keep it running successfully. Your sons receive the proceeds from your life insurance and personal assets. Everyone gets something appropriate to their relationship and capabilities. Appropriate to their relationship. My wife got my business, my partner got control, my sons got paid off. And the offshore accounts? I asked casually. How do those factor in? The room went silent. Completely silent. Even the monitor beeps seemed to fade. What offshore accounts?
Richard's voice was carefully neutral. Summit Strategic Solutions. The Cayman Islands company that's been receiving payments from my business. $340,000 over 8 months. I looked at Mark. You mentioned it this morning. Systems optimization, you said. Mark's face had gone pale. David, that's a legitimate consulting firm. That you own, with my wife. I pulled the papers Peter had given me from my bedside drawer. Bank of the Cayman Islands. Account opened 11 months ago. Beneficial owners, Mark Thornton and Elizabeth Coleman. Elizabeth stood up. David, what is this? Where did you get? Peter Jenkins gave them to me, my attorney. The one you tried to get to notarize forged documents while I was unconscious. I looked at each of them in turn. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you actually believe I'd just sign whatever you put in front of me and never ask questions? Richard's lawyer instincts kicked in. David, I think you're confused. The medication, the stress of your illness. I'm not confused. I'm very, very clear. I pulled out the recorder from under my pillow, set it on the table where they could all see it. I've been recording everything, every conversation, every visit, every word you've said since I woke up. The color drained from Elizabeth's face. Mark took a step toward the door, then stopped. Richard's hand moved toward his briefcase, then froze. That's illegal, Richard said. California is a two-party consent, except when there's reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and depending on what the DA decides, attempted murder. I leaned forward. You tried to forge my will while I was dying. You've been stealing from my business for almost a year. You created an elaborate scheme to take everything I built. Did you really think I'd just let that happen? Elizabeth's tears started. Real ones this time, I thought. Fear tears. David, please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Mark, how long have you been sleeping with my wife? The question landed like a bomb. Mark's mouth opened, closed. Elizabeth gasped. Richard actually backed up a step. That's not, Mark stammered. How? Long. Elizabeth collapsed back into her chair, her hands covering her face. 3 years, she whispered. It started 3 years ago, at the company Christmas party. We were drunk, it was a mistake, and then it just kept happening. 3 years, while I'd worked 16-hour days building the business, while I'd trusted Mark with 20% equity, while I'd slept beside Elizabeth every night completely oblivious. And, Jason, I looked at Mark. My son, the $80,000 I gave him 5 days before my heart attack. Where did that really go? Mark said nothing. Elizabeth was crying into her hands. Richard had gone completely still, lawyer instincts telling him anything he said could be used against him. It went to an account Jason opened with Mark's help, I continued, answering my own question. Another Cayman account. A payoff to keep him quiet about what you were planning, to make him complicit, so he wouldn't warn me. He needed the money, Elizabeth said through her tears. He had debts. He had debts because he's 32 years old and has never held a job for more than 2 years. And instead of letting him learn responsibility, you paid him to betray his father. My heart monitor was beeping faster. A nurse appeared at the door, concerned. Mr. Coleman, your heart rate. I'm fine. I took a breath, forced calm. The nurse hesitated, then left, but I could see her at the station, watching through the window. David, please. Elizabeth reached for my hand. I pulled away. I never wanted to hurt you. I felt invisible. You worked all the time. You were never home. And Mark, he paid attention to me. He made me feel... So you decided to kill me and take my business. No, we never. She looked at Mark desperately. We weren't going to kill you, Mark said quickly, too quickly. The heart attack was real, natural. When it happened, we saw an opportunity, a chance to avoid a messy divorce, legal battles, splitting assets. If you died naturally, everyone would get what they needed without years of fighting. How convenient that my natural heart attack happened right after I gave my son $80,000, and right before you needed me to sign new business. Documents. David, get out. My voice was ice. All 3 of you, get out of my room right now. David, we need to talk about this, Richard started. Talk to my attorney. Talk to the forensic accountant who's going through every transaction in my business. Talk to the police when Peter files charges. But you're done talking to me. I reached for the call button. The nurse appeared immediately. These people are leaving, I told her. They're not allowed back. Not my wife, not him, not the lawyer. No one! Add it to my chart. No visitors except Peter Jenkins. Mr. Coleman, your wife, is not authorized to make any decisions about my care. No decisions, no visits, nothing. I want security outside this door. I want it documented. Do you understand? The nurse looked at Elizabeth, at Mark, at Richard. Professional training, warring with sympathy. I'll get the charge, nurse. They left slowly. Elizabeth sobbing, Mark's face stone, Richard already on his phone, probably calling his own lawyer. At the door, Elizabeth turned back. David, please, 35 years. That has to mean something. I looked at my wife, the woman I'd loved since I was 27 years old, the mother of my children, the person I'd built my entire adult life around. It did mean something, I said quietly. That's what makes this so unforgivable. You didn't just steal money. You stole 35 years of trust. You stole every moment I thought we were partners, that we were building something together. You made my entire life a lie. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Finally, she turned and left. I sat alone in the hospital room, surrounded by recording devices that had captured everything. Video, audio, 3 witnesses to conspiracy, fraud, theft. My phone buzzed. Peter, are you okay? My man said they left looking shaken. I typed back, got everything. All 3 of them. The affair, the accounts, the timeline. All of it. David, that was incredibly dangerous. What if they didn't? And now we have them. All of them. I set the phone down and looked at the button camera in my shirt collar, the pen on my bedside table, the recorder I'd used to capture my own wife admitting to a 3-year affair with my business partner. Evidence. Proof. The ammunition I needed to protect everything I'd built. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like ash. Like standing in the ruins of a burned house, holding the insurance policy, knowing you'd been smart to have coverage but wishing you'd never needed it. 40 years of 16-hour days. 35 years of marriage. 28 employees depending on me. Sons I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. And 3 people I'd trusted had been planning to carve up the pieces after arranging my death. I closed my eyes. The monitor beeped steadily. Proof that I was alive, that my heart was still beating despite everything they'd done to stop it. Tomorrow, Peter would start the legal process. Asset protection, emergency injunctions, criminal complaints. The machinery of justice would begin turning, slowly grinding the people who'd betrayed me. But tonight, I was just a 62-year-old man in a hospital bed, mourning the death of a family that had never really existed, at least not the way I'd thought it did. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Elizabeth's face as she admitted the affair. 3 years. Mark's expression when I confronted him about the offshore accounts. The way Richard had instinctively reached for his briefcase when I mentioned recordings. Lawyer reflexes kicking in to protect himself. The charge nurse had been true to her word. A security guard now sat outside my room. Hospital policy once a patient requested restricted access. No one in or out without approval from me or my designated medical proxy, which I'd officially listed as Peter Jenkins, not Elizabeth. Around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. Dad, it's Jason. Mom called. She's hysterical. What happened? Call me. I stared at the message for a long time. My son, 32 years old. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, sent to college. The man I'd given $80,000 to less than a week ago. The same man who'd taken that money and funneled it to an offshore account as part of a conspiracy to defraud me. I deleted the message without responding. Another buzz. Dad, please. Whatever's going on, we can fix it. Family doesn't give up on family. Family doesn't give up on family. The words felt like broken glass. I typed back, you took $80,000 and put it in a Cayman Islands account. You were part of their plan. There's nothing to fix, Jason. There's only evidence and consequences. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I didn't know what they were planning. Mom said it was just for tax purposes, to protect assets from the business. You're 32 years old. You've had business classes. You knew exactly what an offshore account meant. Dad, I blocked the number. The sky outside my window gradually shifted from black to gray. Dawn over San Diego, the city waking up to a Monday that would be like any other Monday for most people. For me, it was the day everything changed. Peter arrived at 7, carrying coffee and a briefcase full of documents. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "I've been up all night with the forensic accountant," he said, pulling the chair close to my bed. "David, it's worse than we thought. Much worse." "How much worse?" He opened his briefcase, pulled out a thick report. "Summit Strategic Solutions, the Cayman account we knew about. That's just the surface. Mark created 4 other offshore entities over the past 2 years. 4, all receiving payments from your business disguised as legitimate expenses. 4 entities, not 1. How much total? $520,000. The number hit like a physical blow. $500,000. Stolen from the business I'd built with my own hands over 40 years. The breakdown is sophisticated," Peter continued, flipping through pages of spreadsheets and bank records. Consulting fees, software licensing, equipment leasing, maintenance contracts. All legitimate-looking line items that accounting approved. Because Mark was the CFO, he was essentially approving payments to himself. And Elizabeth knew. She's listed as beneficial owner or officer on 3 of the 4 entities. David, this wasn't Mark acting alone and Elizabeth finding out later. This was coordinated from the beginning. They built this structure together. I closed my eyes, breathed, opened them again. "What about Jason?" "Jason's account received $80,000 from you, as we knew. But there's more. Over the past 18 months, he received another $45,000 in smaller transfers from the offshore accounts. $2,500 here, $5,000 there. Regular payments disguised as gifts or loans. $125,000 total to my son, to keep him complicit, to make him part of the scheme." "And Thomas?" I asked. "My younger son, the one living in Oregon, teaching high school English. Clean, no involvement we can find. No suspicious deposits, no offshore accounts, nothing." Peter's expression softened slightly. "David, at least one of your sons stayed honest. Small comfort. 1 out of 2. What do we do now?" Peter pulled out more documents. "I've prepared emergency motions for this afternoon."
First, a temporary restraining order, preventing Elizabeth or Mark from accessing any business accounts or making any transactions.
Second, an emergency amendment to your corporate documents removing Mark as CFO and Elizabeth as any form of beneficiary. Third, a freeze on all offshore accounts pending investigation. Can you do that? Freeze accounts in the Caymans? With evidence of wire fraud and a U.S. attorney interested in prosecution? Yes. The Caymans cooperate with criminal investigations. It takes time, but we can lock down the money before they move it. He paused. "David, I need to ask you something. Are you prepared to press criminal charges? Not just civil recovery. Criminal, federal wire fraud, conspiracy, potentially more depending on what the DA's office finds. Criminal charges. Elizabeth in handcuffs. Mark in prison. My own son facing federal prosecution. How much time would they face? Wire fraud alone, if we can prove the full 520,000, 10 to 20 years. Add conspiracy, add the forged documents, add the fact that they did this while you were incapacitated and vulnerable. Mark could be looking at 25 years. Elizabeth and Richard 15 to 20. Jason, depending on his cooperation and how much he actually knew, anywhere from probation to 10 years. 25 years. Mark was 48. He'd be 73 when he got out. An old man who'd spent half his remaining life in prison. Elizabeth would be in her 70s. Richard past 70. Lives destroyed. They tried to steal everything from me, I said quietly. They planned for me to die. They created elaborate structures to take what I'd built over 40 years. If I'd died on that hospital table 3 days after my heart attack, they would have executed their plan. without a second thought. Yes, then I want them prosecuted. All of them. I want every charge that will stick. I want them to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't conspire to destroy someone's life and walk away when the plan fails. Peter nodded slowly. I'll contact the U.S. Attorney's Office this morning.
With the evidence we have, the recordings, the financial documentation, the forged will attempt, they'll be very interested. This is exactly the kind of case they love.
Sophisticated fraud, sympathetic victim, clear evidence. What happens next? Today, we file the emergency motions. The judge will rule quickly, probably within 48 hours.
Once we have the restraining orders and account freezes in place, we set up your asset protection.
Irrevocable trust, new corporate structure. Everything locked down, so even if they somehow manage to challenge anything, they can't touch what's yours. How long until they're arrested? Federal cases take time. Investigation, grand jury, indictments, realistically, 2 to 3 months before arrests happen. But David, once we file today's motions, they'll know it's coming. They'll lawyer up, probably try to make deals. It's going to get ugly. It's already ugly, Peter. We're just making it official. He gathered his papers. I need you to sign some documents. Authorization for me to act on your behalf. Medical proxy formalization. Corporate amendment approvals. Are you up for that? I'm up for it. We spent the next hour signing papers. Each signature felt like sealing a door, locking out people who'd been inside my life for decades. Each page turned was another bridge burned, another relationship ended. It had to be done. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Elizabeth. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Again. 6 times in 10 minutes. Finally, a text. David, please, we need to talk. I know you're angry, but there are things you don't understand. Please give me a chance to explain. Things I don't understand. Like 3 years of adultery. Like $500,000 stolen. Like forged documents and planned inheritance theft. I showed the text to Peter. Don't respond, he said immediately. Anything you say can complicate the criminal case. Let your lawyer do the talking now. What if she comes here? Security won't let her pass the floor entrance. She's on the restricted list. He stood. I'm going to the courthouse now to file these motions. I'll have my assistant bring you lunch. Don't talk to anyone. Not Elizabeth, not Mark, not Jason, not even well-meaning friends who might call. The next voice you hear besides mine should be your doctor's. After he left, I sat in the silence of my hospital room. The security guard was visible through the door window, solid and reassuring. The morning sun had burned off the fog, revealing a clear blue sky over San Diego. My phone buzzed constantly. Elizabeth, Jason, Mark, even Richard from a different number. I silenced it, turned it face down on the bedside table. Around noon, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Elizabeth's voice, high and angry. "That's my husband! You can't keep me from seeing my own husband!" The charge nurse, calm and professional. "Mrs. Coleman, your husband has requested restricted access. We're legally required to honor that request." "This is ridiculous. I'm his wife of 35 years. Ma'am, if you don't lower your voice, I'll have to call security to escort you from the building." I sat in my bed, listening to my wife of 35 years being threatened with removal from the hospital. Part of me, the part that still remembered loving her, that remembered building a life together, wanted to tell the nurse it was okay, that she could come in. The rest of me remembered Mark's calculating expression, the offshore accounts, 3 years of lies, $80,000 given to our son to make him complicit. I stayed silent. Eventually, Elizabeth left. I heard her footsteps retreating down the hallway, heard her crying, heard someone, probably Jason, comforting her. My phone buzzed. Text from Thomas, my younger son. "Dad," Jason called me. "He says Mom is falling apart, and you won't talk to anyone. What's happening? Are you okay?" Thomas, the clean one, the one who hadn't taken money, hadn't conspired, hadn't betrayed me. I called him. "Dad." His voice was worried. 29 years old, teaching English at a high school in Portland, married to a nice girl named Sarah, living a simple life. The son who'd actually made me proud. Jason said something about offshore accounts and lawyers. "What's going on?" Thomas, I need you to listen very carefully. Your mother and Mark Thornton have been having an affair for 3 years. They created offshore companies and stole over $500,000 from my business. While I was unconscious after my heart attack, they tried to forge my will to steal everything. Your brother took money from them to keep quiet about it. Silence on the other end. Long, heavy silence. Thomas, I'm here. I'm just processing. His voice was shaken. Mom and Mark, are you sure? She admitted it yesterday. They both did. Thomas, I recorded everything. The affair, the theft, all of it. I have evidence that would stand up in federal court. Federal court? Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm pressing charges. Criminal charges. Your mother, Mark. Probably Richard, too. Maybe Jason, depending on what the U.S. attorney decides. Jesus. A long exhale. Dad, I don't know what to say. This is insane. Mom called me this morning saying you'd gone crazy, that the heart attack had affected your thinking, that she was worried about your mental state. That's what she would say. It's what anyone caught would say. But Thomas, I have recordings, bank records, documents. This isn't confusion or medication. This is $520,000 of theft, 3 years of adultery, and an attempted fraud that would have taken everything I built. What do you need from me? The question nearly broke me. Not defensiveness, not denial. But she's my mother. Just, what do you need from me? I need you to understand that I'm not crazy, that this is real. And I need you to know that when this all becomes public, and it will, that I love you, and none of this is your fault. Dad, I'm coming down there, today. I'll get a substitute for my classes. I'll drive down today. No, not yet. It's not safe. Not safe. Dad, Peter Jenkins, my attorney, thinks there's a possibility they might try something to prevent me from testifying, from moving forward with charges. I need you in Oregon, safe, where you can't be drawn into this. I paused. Thomas, if something happens to me, Peter has instructions. Everything goes to you. The business, the house, everything. Not your mother, not Jason. You, Dad, nothing's going to happen. Promise me that if something does happen, you'll work with Peter, that you'll make sure they don't get away with this. I promise. But Dad, please be careful. Please. After we hung up, I felt marginally better. One son, still honest. One relationship untainted by greed and conspiracy. It was something. Peter's assistant arrived at 1 with lunch and an update. Mr. Jenkins filed all the motions at 11:30. The judge has scheduled an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning at 9. He said to tell you it's moving faster than expected. The judge took one look at the evidence and called it deeply concerning. Tomorrow morning, less than 24 hours until the legal machinery began crushing the people who tried to destroy me. That afternoon, my cardiologist came by for his daily check. Dr. Morrison, 60s, kind eyes, competent hands. He'd been my doctor for 15 years. David, your vitals look good. Heart rhythm is stable. Blood work is improving. Physically, you're recovering well. He paused. But your nurse mentioned some family conflict. Stress restrictions, security guards. I have to tell you, stress is the worst thing for a recovering heart attack patient. I know. Is there anything I can do? Family counseling resources. Mediation services. My wife and business partner stole $500,000 from me and tried to forge my will while I was unconscious. There's no counseling service that fixes that, Dr. Morrison. He blinked. Processed. I see. Well, in that case, I'd say you're handling it remarkably well, all things considered. He made notes on his tablet. I'm going to keep you here another 3 days for monitoring. After that, assuming your recovery continues, you can go home. You'll need cardiac rehab, lifestyle modifications, follow-up appointments. But David, find somewhere safe to recover. Not home, if that's where the people you're in conflict with have access to you. Already arranged. Peter found me a short-term rental, secured building, security system, completely separate from my previous life. Good. He squeezed my shoulder. Pierre, I've been your doctor long enough to know you're a fighter. You built a successful business from nothing. You'll get through this too. Just remember, your heart has been through trauma.
Don't push it too hard too fast. After he left, I thought about what he'd said. Your heart has been through trauma. Physical trauma from the heart attack. Emotional trauma from discovering that 35 years of marriage had been, at least partially, a lie. Which wound would take longer to heal? My phone buzzed. Email from Peter. Judge granted emergency hearing for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Elizabeth's attorney, not Richard, he's conflicted out, has been notified. Mark's attorney has been notified. This is happening. I forwarded the email to Thomas with a note. It begins tomorrow. I love you, son. His response came back immediately. I love you too, Dad. Kick their asses. That night I slept better than I had in days. Not well, the hospital was never conducive to real rest. But better, because tomorrow, the people who'd tried to take everything from me would face consequences. Tomorrow they'd learn that David Coleman wasn't a sick old man to be manipulated and stolen from. Tomorrow, justice would start its slow, inexorable march, and I would be there to watch every single step. The courthouse in downtown San Diego was a modern building of glass and concrete, imposing in its efficiency. Peter had arranged for a wheelchair and a private entrance. The judge had agreed I shouldn't have to navigate crowds or media, and definitely shouldn't risk an accidental encounter with the defendants. We arrived at 8:30, early enough to get settled. The courtroom was small. These emergency hearings weren't public spectacles. Just the judge, the lawyers, the parties involved. Elizabeth sat on the opposite side with her attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 50s named Patricia Valdez. Elizabeth looked terrible. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing a plain black dress. The grieving wife whose husband had gone insane. Performative suffering. Mark sat 2 rows behind her with his attorney, a man I recognized from business networking events. Stephen Harding, expensive and aggressive. Mark wore a suit, projecting confidence, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Richard wasn't there. Conflict of interest, as Peter had mentioned. He'd face his own proceedings later. Jason wasn't there either. Smart of him. Or maybe his attorney had told him to stay away. At 9 o'clock exactly, the judge entered. Honorable Margaret Chen, 50s, with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. She looked at the assembled parties with an expression that suggested she'd already read everything and formed opinions. This is an emergency hearing regarding restraining orders and asset freezes in the matter of Coleman versus Coleman and Thornton. She glanced at her notes. I've reviewed Mr. Jenkins's filing and supporting evidence. I've also reviewed the responses from Mrs. Coleman's counsel and Mr. Thornton's counsel. Let's be clear from the outset. This is not a trial. This is a determination of whether emergency protective measures are warranted pending full investigation and potential criminal proceedings. Criminal proceedings. The word hung in the air. Mr. Jenkins, you're alleging wire fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and misappropriation of funds totaling $520,000. That's a serious allegation. Show me why I should grant these emergency orders. Peter stood. Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. We have bank records showing systematic transfers from Coleman's auto service to 4 offshore entities owned by the respondents. We have recordings of the respondents admitting to the transfers, to their affair, and to their plan to take control of Mr. Coleman's business in the event of his death. We have copies of forged documents presented for notarization while Mr. Coleman was unconscious. This isn't speculation. This is documented, admitted fraud. Judge Chen looked at Patricia Valdez. Counselor, Elizabeth's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that certain financial transactions occurred, but characterizes them very differently. Mrs. Coleman was acting to protect family assets from business creditors and potential litigation. The offshore structures were established for legitimate asset protection purposes. As for the will and medical directives, Mrs. Coleman was acting out of love and concern for her incapacitated husband, trying to ensure smooth transition if the worst occurred. These are the actions of a worried wife, not a criminal. Ms. Valdez, your client was having an affair with Mr. Thornton for 3 years. She created financial structures with her lover using her husband's business funds. She attempted to have documents notarized, giving herself control of everything while her husband was unconscious. You're really arguing this was legitimate asset protection?
Patricia Valdez's expression didn't change. My client's personal life, while regrettable, doesn't negate her legal rights as a spouse. California is a community property state. Mrs. Coleman has legitimate interests in marital assets, which she attempted to secure through forgery and fraud while her husband was on life support. Judge Chen's voice was ice. Mr. Harding, what's your client's position? Mark's attorney stood. Your Honor, Mr. Thornton categorically denies any fraud. The offshore entities were created with proper corporate authorization. All payments were approved through normal business channels. My client's relationship with Mrs. Coleman, while inappropriate, doesn't constitute criminal behavior. At most, this is a civil business dispute that should be handled through normal corporate governance procedures, not emergency judicial intervention. Normal corporate governance, when Mr. Thornton is the CFO approving payments to his own companies? Judge Chen shook her head. I've seen a lot of creative arguments in my time, counselor. That's not one of them. She pulled out the documents Peter had filed. I'm looking at bank records showing $520,000 moved to offshore accounts. I'm reading transcripts of recorded conversations where the respondents admit to the affair and discuss plans contingent on Mr. Coleman's death. I'm seeing evidence that Mrs. Coleman presented forged documents for notarization within 48 hours of her husband's incapacitation. She looked up. This isn't a close call. Peter had been right. The evidence was overwhelming. Mrs. Coleman, Mr. Thornton, please stand. They stood. Elizabeth was crying silently. Mark's face was stone. I'm granting all of Mr. Jenkins's requested relief. Effective immediately, both of you are restrained from accessing any business accounts, making any transactions related to Coleman's auto service, or disposing of any assets that might be considered proceeds of the alleged fraud. The offshore accounts are frozen pending full investigation. Mrs. Coleman, you are specifically barred from representing yourself as having any authority over your husband's medical care or business affairs. Elizabeth's attorney started to object. Judge Chen held up a hand. I'm not done. Furthermore, I'm referring this entire matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for Criminal Investigation. The evidence presented suggests multiple federal violations. They'll determine what charges, if any, are appropriate. But, Ms. Valdez, Mr. Harding, you should advise your clients that they are looking at serious prison time if even half of what's alleged here is proven. She banged her gavel. Orders are entered. Copies will be filed within the hour. This hearing is adjourned. It was over in 20 minutes. 20 minutes to dismantle the conspiracy that had taken them nearly a year to build. As we left the courtroom, I caught Elizabeth's eye. She looked destroyed, broken. The confident woman who'd sat at my bedside playing the devoted wife was gone. In her place was someone who just realized the walls were closing in. David, please! She called out as Peter wheeled me past. Please, we need to talk. No contact, Mrs. Coleman, Peter said firmly. That includes verbal, written, electronic. The restraining order is very clear. In the hallway, away from the courtroom, Peter knelt beside my wheelchair. That went better than I expected. Judge Chen is notoriously tough, but even I didn't expect her to refer to the U.S. attorney this quickly. What happens now? Now we wait for the federal investigation. Meanwhile, I'll start the Asset Protection Trust. With these court orders in place, we can move forward, knowing Elizabeth and Mark can't touch anything. He paused. David, this is the beginning of the end. They're going to fight, they're going to try to make deals, but with this evidence and a federal investigation, they're finished. How long until arrest? Federal cases move slowly, 60 to 90 days probably, but they'll be indicted. Of that I'm certain. We left through the private entrance. Outside, San Diego was sunny and bright. Normal people going about normal days, unaware that in a courthouse downtown, 3 lives had just been irrevocably destroyed. My phone buzzed. Text from Thomas. How did it go? I typed back. We won. All orders granted. Federal investigation opened. It's really over. I'm proud of you, Dad. That took courage, or just survival instinct. When someone tries to take everything from you, you fight back. It's not courage, it's necessity. That afternoon, back in my hospital room, I watched the news. Nothing about the hearing, It was too small, too procedural, but it would leak eventually. Business associates would hear. Friends would call. The whole sordid story would become public. Let it. Let everyone know what Elizabeth and Mark had done. Let Jason face the social consequences of his betrayal. Let Richard explain to his clients why he'd helped forge legal documents. I was done protecting people who'd tried to destroy me. The next 3 days passed in a strange limbo. I recovered physically, heart rate stabilizing, energy returning, the doctors pleased with my progress. But emotionally, I existed in a kind of frozen state. Not quite grieving, not quite angry, just numb. Peter visited daily with updates. The forensic accountant had found 2 more offshore accounts. The total theft was now at $615,000. Elizabeth's attorney had tried to negotiate her full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. Peter had refused. Mark's attorney had tried the same, also refused. "We have them dead to rights," Peter explained. "Why would we negotiate? What about Jason? The U.S. attorney is still deciding. If he cooperates fully, testifies against Elizabeth and Mark, he might get probation. If he refuses," Peter shrugged, "he's 32, old enough to face consequences." On Thursday, Dr. Morrison discharged me. "You're physically ready to leave. Continue your medications. Start cardiac rehab next week. Follow up in 2 weeks. And David, take care of yourself. Not just your heart. All of you." Peter had arranged everything. A furnished apartment in downtown San Diego, security building, month-to-month lease. Temporary housing until I decided what to do with the La Jolla house. Whether to sell it, keep it, burn it down, I hadn't decided yet. Thomas flew down that evening, insisted on staying with me for a week. We sat in the anonymous apartment, looking out at the city lights, not saying much. What was there to say? "Dad," Thomas said finally, "I know this sounds crazy given everything, but are you okay?" Was I okay? My wife of 35 years had betrayed me. My business partner had stolen from me. My own son had conspired against me. I'd narrowly avoided death, both from the heart attack and from the plan they'd constructed to steal everything after I was gone. Was I okay? "I'm alive," I said. 3 weeks ago. That was uncertain. So yes, Thomas. Compared to where I could be, I'm okay. He nodded. We sat in silence, 2 people trying to make sense of how family could destroy family, how love could turn to theft, how 35 years could evaporate in 3 days of unconsciousness and 1 week of investigation. My phone buzzed. Email from Peter. U.S. Attorney's Office has assigned a prosecutor. Agent Mitchell Weber from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit wants to meet with you next week. They're moving forward. This is real. I showed Thomas the email. "They're really going to be arrested," he said. "Mom, Mark, maybe Jason. Really arrested." "Yes." "Good." His voice was hard. "They deserve it." I looked at my younger son, 29 years old, teaching English, living a simple, honest life. The one member of my family who'd stayed clean. "Thank you for being here," I said. Where else would I be? Where else, indeed? Not conspiring with offshore accounts. Not planning inheritance fraud, not taking payoffs to stay silent. Just here, being a son, being honest. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because everything else, the marriage, the partnership, the family I'd thought I had, all of it was gone, revealed as illusion. Beautiful lies that crumbled the moment someone pulled back the curtain. Tomorrow I'd start rebuilding. Tomorrow I'd begin the process of protecting what remained and creating something new from the wreckage. But tonight I sat with my one honest son in a temporary apartment that wasn't home, mourning a life that had never really existed, and planning for the day when the people who'd destroyed that illusion would finally face justice. Agent Mitchell Weber looked exactly like you'd expect an FBI financial crimes investigator to look. Mid-40s, conservative suit, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and a handshake that was firm but not aggressive. Professional, competent, the kind of person who'd spent 20 years following money trails through labyrinthine corporate structures. He sat across from me in Peter's conference room, a laptop open in front of him, a thick file folder beside it. Thomas sat to my right. He'd insisted on being present for this meeting. Peter was to my left. Legal pad ready. Mr. Coleman, thank you for meeting with me. Weber's voice was measured, calm. I've spent the past week reviewing the evidence your attorney provided, and I have to say, this is one of the more clear-cut fraud cases I've seen in my 15 years with the Bureau. Clear-cut? That's good? For prosecution purposes, yes. The documentation is excellent. The recordings are admissible. The financial trail is well documented. Your attorney did exceptional work preserving evidence. He opened his laptop. But I need to walk you through what we've found as we've dug deeper. Some of it is going to be difficult to hear. I braced myself. What could possibly be worse than what I already knew? The offshore accounts we've identified total 7, not 4. The total theft isn't $615,000. It's $893,000. The number landed like a physical blow. $893,000. Nearly $900,000. Almost $1 million. Thomas's hand found mine under the table, squeezed. How? My voice was barely a whisper. Weber turned his laptop so I could see the screen. Spreadsheets, bank transfers, corporate registrations. Mark Thornton was extremely sophisticated. He created what's called a shell game. Multiple entities in multiple jurisdictions, all moving money in complex patterns to make tracking difficult. We have accounts in the Caymans, the British Virgin Islands, and Panama, each one receiving payments disguised as legitimate business expenses. He clicked through screens showing the paper trail. Consulting fees, equipment leases, software licensing, maintenance contracts, all fake, all funneling money to companies owned by Mark and Elizabeth. The earliest transfer we've found dates back 31 months. 2.5 years, Mr. Coleman. This wasn't a recent scheme.
They'd been planning and executing this for over 2 years before your heart attack. 2.5 years. Long before I'd had any health problems. Long before there was any crisis that could have triggered desperate behavior.
They'd been systematically stealing from me for over 2 years while I worked 16-hour days building the business they were robbing. There's more, Weber said. Jason Coleman, your son. His involvement is more extensive than we initially thought. How extensive? Weber pulled up another file. He received $143,000 total, over 18 months. Not just the $80,000 you gave him directly.
Regular transfers, $2,000 here, $5,000 there, from the offshore accounts. We've documented 67 separate transactions. $143,000.
My son had taken $143,000 while watching me work myself into a heart attack. He knew, I said. Not a question, a statement. Yes, he absolutely knew. We've recovered email communications between Jason, Mark, and your wife, discussing the distributions and how to keep them off your radar. He was a willing, active participant. Weber's expression remained neutral, professional. Mr.
Coleman, I need to ask you some questions about the timeline of your heart attack, the medical records, the circumstances.
I want you to walk me through that day in detail. Why? Because there's a possibility this goes beyond fraud. The room went cold. Peter leaned forward. Agent Weber, what exactly are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything yet. I'm investigating. He looked at me. Mr. Coleman, had you been experiencing symptoms before the heart attack? Chest pain, shortness of breath, unusual fatigue? For a few weeks, maybe a month, I thought it was stress. Too much work. Had anyone suggested you see a doctor? I thought back. Elizabeth did. Several times. She kept saying I looked tired, that I should get checked out. And did you? No, I was too busy. The Carlsbad expansion, the quarterly reports, inventory issues at the North County location. I trailed off. I thought I had time, that I was just working too hard. Weber made notes. The day of your heart attack. Walk me through it. What did you eat that morning? Any unusual medications? Anyone bring you food or drinks at the office? Why are you asking this? He looked at me directly. Because in cases of conspiracy, to defraud where the fraudsters stand, to benefit from someone's death, we have to examine whether that death, or near death, was natural or accelerated. The implications settled over the room like a shroud. You think they tried to kill me? Not a question. I think we need to rule it out. Heart attacks can be induced. Certain substances can trigger cardiac events in people with underlying risk factors. You'd been under stress, working long hours, eating poorly. You were the perfect candidate for a natural heart attack. Jesus Christ, Thomas whispered. Peter's voice was steel. What do you need from us? I need Mr. Coleman's permission to obtain his complete medical records. I need access to toxicology reports if any were run at the time of admission. I need a list of everything he consumed in the 24 hours before the cardiac event. Food, drinks, medications, supplements, everything. Weber looked at me. I'm also recommending that you see a cardiologist I work with, Dr. Sarah Brennan.
She specializes in forensic cardiology. She can review your case and determine if the heart attack was consistent with your risk factors or if there are anomalies. Anomalies, I repeated.
You mean evidence of poisoning? I mean evidence that would help us determine whether this was purely natural or had assistance. The word hung in the air. Assistance, a clinical term for attempted murder. Do it, I said. Whatever you need. Test whatever you need to test. If they tried to kill me, I want to know. I want evidence. Weber nodded. I'll arrange for Dr. Brennan to contact you this week. In the meantime, I need you to write down everything you remember about that day. Where you went, who you saw, what you ate, what you drank. Everything, even details that seem irrelevant. After he left, the three of us sat in Peter's conference room in stunned silence. They might have tried to kill you, Thomas said finally. Not just steal from you. Actually kill you. We don't know that yet, Peter cautioned. Weber is being thorough. It might be standard procedure in cases like this. Or it might be that my wife and business partner tried to poison me to death so they could steal my business. The words sounded insane, like something from a movie, not real life. But then again, so did offshore accounts in the Caymans. So did systematic theft of nearly $900,000. So did conspiracy involving my own son. Why not attempted murder too? That night in my temporary apartment, I made the list Agent Weber had requested, writing down everything I could remember from the day of my heart attack. Morning, coffee at home. Elizabeth made it. 2 cups, black like always. I stopped, stared at that sentence. Elizabeth made it. She made my coffee almost every morning. Had for 35 years. One of those small intimacies of long marriage. She knew how I liked it. She'd bring it to me while I dressed for work. Had she put something in my coffee? My hand shook as I continued writing. Breakfast, oatmeal, also made by Elizabeth, with blueberries and walnuts. Drove to office, stopped at Starbucks for another coffee around 10 a.m. Venti dark roast. Lunch. Mark brought sandwiches from that deli on 5th. We ate in my office while reviewing expansion plans. Turkey club for me. Mark brought lunch. Mark, who stood to gain 25% more equity in my business if I died. Mark, who'd been sleeping with my wife for 3 years. Mark, who'd stolen nearly $900,000. Mark brought my lunch. Afternoon, bottled water from the office fridge. Several bottles throughout the day. Heart attack occurred around 4:30 p.m. Mark was present, called 911. I set down the pen, looked at what I'd written. 3 opportunities. Coffee at home. Lunch brought by Mark. Water from a fridge Mark had access to. 3 opportunities to add something to food or drink that would trigger a cardiac event in a man under stress with underlying risk factors. My phone rang. Peter. David. I've been thinking about what Weber said. About testing. There's something you should know. He paused. When you were admitted to the hospital, they ran a standard toxicology screen. It's routine for cardiac patients. I've requested a copy of the results. They should arrive tomorrow. You think they'll show something? I think if there's anything to find, it would be there. The question is whether they tested for the right things. Some substances metabolize quickly. If they were looking for common drugs and not exotic cardiac-inducing agents, they might have missed it. What happens if they find something? Then this becomes a federal attempted murder case in addition to the fraud. Mark and Elizabeth are looking at life in prison, possibly death penalty, depending on how the DA's office wants to proceed. Life in prison, or death, for my wife, for my business partner. Peter, I need you to be honest with me. Do you think they did it? Do you think they tried to kill me? Silence on the other end. Long, heavy silence. I think the evidence points to a sophisticated long-term conspiracy to defraud you.
I think they created elaborate structures to steal nearly $1 million. I think they had documents ready to seize control of your assets within hours of your incapacitation. I think they stood to gain everything from your death. He paused.
Yes, David. I think it's possible they tried to make sure that heart attack happened when it did. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, looking at the list I'd made. 3 opportunities. Coffee at home, lunch from Mark, water from a fridge he accessed daily. Any one of them could have been poisoned, or all 3. A small amount here, a small amount there, building up in my system until my stressed heart simply gave out. Plausible deniability. He worked too hard. He was under stress. He didn't take care of himself. Of course, he had a heart attack. And if I'd died, Elizabeth gets the business through her forged will.
Mark gets his 25% increase, plus $200,000 in consulting fees. They sell the business for $2 million, split the proceeds, and move on with their lives. The perfect crime. Except, I woke up. Doctor.
Sarah Brennan's office was in a medical building near UCSD, overlooking the ocean. She was younger than I expected, late 30s maybe, with intelligent eyes and a manner that was both professional and kind. Mr. Coleman, thank you for coming in. She gestured to a chair in her consultation room. Thomas had come with me again, my constant shadow these past 2 weeks. Agent Weber asked me to review your case.
I specialize in forensic cardiology, examining cardiac events where there may be legal questions involved. Questions like whether someone tried to kill me. Questions like whether your heart attack was purely the result of natural risk factors or
whether there might have been contributing factors that wouldn't normally be present. She pulled up files on her computer. I've reviewed your medical records, the admission notes from your heart attack, and the toxicology screening that was performed. And your risk factors were moderate, but not extreme. 52 years old, mild hypertension, cholesterol slightly elevated, but controlled with medication. Family history. Your father died of heart disease at 57. You worked long hours, experienced chronic stress. All of these contributed to your cardiac event. But, she turned the screen toward me, but the severity of your heart attack was disproportionate to your risk profile. You had what's called a STEMI, ST elevation myocardial infarction. Massive. The kind we usually see in patients with much more severe underlying disease or in patients experiencing extreme acute stress. I was under stress, the business, the expansion. The stress you were experiencing wasn't unusual for you. According to your records, you'd maintained that work pattern for years. Your body was adapted to it. For you to suddenly have a massive cardiac event of this severity, there would typically need to be a triggering factor beyond your normal stress level. My mouth went dry. What kind of triggering factor? Dr. Brennan pulled up another screen. The initial toxicology screen was negative for common substances. No cocaine, no amphetamines, nothing that would typically show up in a standard drug panel. But Mr.
Coleman, there are substances that can induce cardiac events that aren't part of standard screening.
Exotic plant alkaloids, certain pharmaceutical compounds in unusual combinations, even some dietary supplements in high doses. Can you test for those? We can now. Technology has advanced. I'd like to run what's called an expanded forensic toxicology panel on your stored blood samples from the admission. The hospital keeps them for 90 days. You're at 3 weeks now, so we have time. This expanded panel can detect over 600 different compounds, including many that can cause cardiac events. How long does it take? 2 weeks for results. Possibly 3, depending on what we find and what confirmatory testing is needed. 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks to know if my wife and business partner had tried to poison me to death. Do it, I said. Whatever it costs, do it. She nodded. I'll order it today. Mr. Coleman, I need to prepare you. Even if we find something, proving who administered it and when can be difficult. These substances metabolize.
They leave traces, but connecting those traces to specific people requires more than just forensic evidence. It requires circumstantial evidence, opportunity, motive. We have motive.
$893,000 in control of a $2.3 million business. That's for law enforcement to determine. My job is simply to tell you whether your heart attack was natural or had pharmaceutical assistance. She closed her laptop. I'll call you as soon as I have results. In the meantime, Agent Weber suggested I tell you this. If someone did try to poison you, they may try again if they feel trapped. You should be very careful about what you eat and drink, and from whom. Thomas walked me out to the car. Neither of us spoke until we were on the highway back to my apartment. Dad, you need protection, not just legal protection. Actual, physical protection. I have the security building. That's not enough. If they tried to kill you once and failed, if they're facing federal prison, what's stopping them from trying again? His voice was urgent. Please, let me hire a security firm. Someone to watch the apartment. Screen your food, make sure… Thomas, I can't live like that. Looking over my shoulder, afraid of every meal, every drink. Better paranoid than dead. He pulled over to the side of the road, put the car in park, turned to face me. Dad, listen to me. They stole almost $1 million. They conspired to forge your will. They've already shown they have no moral boundaries. If Dr. Brennan finds poison in your blood, we'll know they tried to kill you once. What makes you think they won't try again? He was right. Of course, he was right. Okay, I said quietly. Okay, arrange it. Security, screening, whatever you think is necessary. He pulled back onto the highway, his hands tight on the wheel. I'm also staying here. I already called my principal, arranged a leave of absence. I'm not going back to Oregon until this is resolved. Thomas, your job can wait. You're my father. You're the only family member who didn't betray you. I'm staying. The only family member who didn't betray you. The words hit harder than he probably intended. That evening, Thomas hired a firm called Sentinel Security, 2 retired police officers who would rotate 12-hour shifts outside my apartment, a 3rd specialist who would handle food security, testing anything I ate or drank for common poisons and adulterants. It's $1,500 a week, Thomas said. I'm paying it. Thomas, no. I'm paying it with money you're going to reimburse me for when this is over. Consider it a loan. Dad, please let me do this. I agreed because I was tired of arguing and because somewhere deep down, I was scared. Scared that my own wife might have tried to kill me. Scared that if the toxicology came back positive, there would be no going back. No reconciliation. No chance of anything but complete destruction of everyone involved. And scared that they might try again. The days waiting for Dr. Brennan's results were surreal. I started cardiac rehab, monitored exercise, dietary counseling, stress management. The instructors were encouraging, positive. None of them knew that while I was rebuilding my heart, I was waiting to find out if someone had deliberately tried to stop it. Peter filed the paperwork for the irrevocable trust. My assets began transferring to professional management. The house in La Jolla went on the market. I couldn't live there anymore, couldn't sleep in the bed I'd shared with Elizabeth, couldn't sit at the table where she'd made me coffee that might have been poisoned. Agent Weber called with updates. The grand jury had been convened. Witnesses were being called. Mark's attorney had tried to negotiate full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. Weber had refused. They had enough evidence without Mark's testimony. Let him face the full weight of his crimes. Elizabeth's attorney tried the same, also refused. Jason's attorney reached out. He wanted to make a deal, full testimony against Elizabeth and Mark in exchange for immunity. Peter consulted with me before responding. He's your son, Peter said carefully. If he testifies, he might avoid prison. But David, you need to understand, his testimony would help convict Elizabeth, your wife, his mother. She's not his mother anymore. She's a criminal who used him in a conspiracy. My voice was cold. Tell his attorney we'll consider the deal if his testimony is complete and truthful. But he gets no money from me. Ever. Even if he avoids prison, he's cut off. Jason's attorney agreed. Apparently, the prospect of federal prison was a strong motivator. 2 weeks after my meeting with Dr. Brennan, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. Her number on the screen. I answered with shaking hands. Dr. Brennan, Mr. Coleman, I have your results. Her voice was measured, clinical. "You should probably sit down." I was already sitting. Thomas appeared from his room, sensing something important. "We found something," Dr. Brennan continued. "Multiple compounds, actually. The first is digoxin, a cardiac medication. It's used therapeutically to treat heart conditions, but in elevated doses, it can cause dangerous arrhythmias and cardiac events. Your blood levels were 3 times higher than therapeutic range. I don't take digoxin, never have. I know, that's in your records. You were never prescribed digoxin. But somehow you had toxic levels in your system at the time of your heart attack. What else? Ephedrine, a stimulant, again at levels well above what would be considered normal, even for someone taking it therapeutically. In combination with digoxin, ephedrine can create a perfect storm for cardiac events. Overstimulation of an already compromised heart. My hands were shaking. Thomas took the phone, put it on speaker, set it on the table between us. "Dr. Brennan, this is Thomas Coleman, David's son. You're saying someone poisoned him." "I'm saying, Mr. Coleman had toxic levels of 2 substances in his system that he shouldn't have been taking, at levels that would significantly increase the risk of a cardiac event, administered in a pattern consistent with deliberate dosing rather than accidental. Exposure. How would someone administer these? Both compounds can be dissolved in liquids or added to food. Digoxin is bitter, but can be masked in coffee or in strongly flavored foods. Ephedrine is easier. It's tasteless in solution. Small doses over several days would build up in the system, creating cumulative risk. Then, a final, larger dose to trigger the event. Coffee. The coffee. Elizabeth made me every morning. The lunch Mark brought. The water from the office fridge. 3 opportunities. "Dr. Brennan, can you determine when these substances were administered?" I asked.
Based on blood levels and metabolism rates, I'd estimate exposure occurred over a 3 to 5 day period before your heart attack, with a significant dose administered the day of the event. Mr.
Coleman, I'm required to report these findings to law enforcement. This constitutes evidence of attempted murder. Agent Weber is already investigating. Please send your report to him and to my attorney, Peter Jenkins. After she hung up, Thomas and I sat in silence. "They tried to kill you," he said finally. "She tried to kill you. Mom actually tried to kill you." Mom, not Elizabeth. Not the woman who'd stolen and lied and conspired. Mom, his mother, the woman who'd raised him. "I'm sorry," I said. "Thomas, I'm so sorry you have to know this. Don't apologize, you didn't do this." "She did." He stood, paced to the window. "What happens now?" My phone rang again. Agent Weber. "Mr. Coleman, I just received Dr. Brennan's report. We're moving immediately. Arrest warrants will be issued today."
Elizabeth Coleman and Mark Thornton for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud. Richard Holmes for conspiracy to commit fraud and obstruction of justice. Elizabeth Coleman and Mark Thornton for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud. Richard Holmes for conspiracy to commit fraud and obstruction of justice. They'll be in custody by tonight. Tonight.
In a few hours, my wife of 35 years would be arrested for trying to murder me. What about Jason? His deal protects him from prosecution on the attempted murder. He claims he didn't know about the poisoning, that he thought it was just financial fraud. We believe him. The poisoning appears to have been only Elizabeth and Mark. Only Elizabeth and Mark. Only my wife and my business partner, working together to stop my heart. Agent Weber, I need to know. How did they get the drugs? Can you trace that? We're working on it. Digoxin is prescription only, but Mark has connections in the medical supply industry through your business. You sell automotive equipment to medical facilities, correct? Yes. 3 hospitals and 2 clinics in the San Diego area. Mark could have accessed pharmaceutical supplies through those connections. We're pulling records now. Ephedrine is easier. It's in many cold medications and supplements. Could be purchased legally. So they planned this. Got the drugs, tested doses, built up to the final attempt. Yes. Mr. Coleman, this was premeditated attempted murder in service of financial fraud. In California, that's a special circumstances case. If convicted, They're looking at life without parole, possibly death penalty. Death penalty. For Elizabeth, for Mark. I need to call my son, I said. He needs to hear about the arrests from me, not from TV. One more thing, Mr. Coleman. The arrests will be high profile. Business owner, attempted murder, nearly $1 million in fraud. Media will be interested. Do you want us to coordinate with your attorney on a statement? No statement, no media. I just want them in prison. After Weber hung up, I called Jason. He answered on the first ring. Dad, the FBI is arresting your mother and Mark Thornton today for attempting to murder me. Dr. Brennan found poison in my blood, digoxin and ephedrine, administered in doses designed to trigger a heart attack. Silence, then sobbing. My 32-year-old son, crying. I didn't know, he choked out. Dad, I swear to God, I didn't know about the poison. The money. Yes, I knew about the offshore accounts, but I thought it was just financial stuff. I never thought. You took $143,000 while watching them steal from me. You were part of it, Jason. Maybe you didn't know about the murder attempt, but you knew about the theft. You knew, and you said nothing. I'm sorry, Dad, I'm so sorry. Your deal protects you from prison. That's more than you deserve. But Jason, hear me clearly. You are not my son anymore. I have one son, Thomas. You are nothing to me. No money, no inheritance, no relationship. You made your choice when you took their money. Now live with that choice. I hung up, blocked his number, felt nothing. Thomas was watching me. You okay? Was I okay? My wife had tried to kill me with poison. My business partner had helped her do it. My older son had taken money to stay quiet about stealing but claimed ignorance about murder. The FBI was about to arrest 3 people I'd trusted with my life. Was I okay? No, I said honestly, but I will be. Once they're in prison, once they can't hurt me anymore, I'll be okay. That evening at 6 o'clock, Agent Weber called again. It's done, all 3 in custody. Elizabeth Coleman arrested at her sister's house in Carlsbad. Mark Thornton arrested at his apartment. Richard Holmes arrested at his law office. All 3 are being held without bail pending arraignment tomorrow morning. No bail, flight risk and severity of charges. Judge agreed they're too dangerous to release. Mr. Coleman, it's over. You're safe now. They can't hurt you anymore. I hung up and walked to the window of my temporary apartment. Somewhere in San Diego, in 3 different holding cells, the people who'd tried to destroy me sat in orange jumpsuits, their freedom gone, their lives effectively over. Elizabeth, who I'd loved for 35 years, who'd made me coffee every morning, some of which had been poisoned, who'd smiled at me while plotting my death. Mark, who I'd trusted for 12 years, who'd brought me lunch the day I nearly died, who'd called 911 and saved my life, or pretended to save it after ensuring the poison did its work. Richard, who'd drafted the forged documents, who'd helped construct the legal framework to steal everything after I was gone. All 3 of them, arrested, charged, facing life in prison. Justice. This was justice. So why did it feel so hollow? Thomas came and stood beside me. It's over, Dad. No, I said quietly. It's just beginning. The trial, the testimony, the media coverage, all of it. This is just the end of the beginning. But you're alive. They tried to kill you and they failed. You're alive and they're in prison. That's a win. I looked at my youngest son, my only son now, the one who'd stayed honest when everyone else had chosen greed. Yes, I agreed. I suppose it is. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving, like crawling out of wreckage and realizing everything you'd built was destroyed. But at least you were breathing. At least I was breathing. For now, that had to be enough. The San Diego Federal Courthouse was a fortress of glass and steel, intimidating by design. I arrived early, 7:30 for a 9 o'clock arraignment, because Peter insisted we avoid the media circus that was already assembling on the front steps. Business owner's wife charged with attempted murder. That was the headline in the San Diego Union Tribune. By morning, it had spread to the LA Times, the Associated Press, even CNN's website. The story had everything media loved: money, betrayal, poison, sex. A made-for-TV movie in real time. We entered through a side entrance, reserved for witnesses and victims. Peter had arranged it with the U.S. Attorney's office. Thomas walked beside me, his hand on my elbow like I was an invalid. Maybe I was. 3 weeks post-heart attack, still on 6 different medications, still attending cardiac rehab 3 times a week, still alive despite my wife's best efforts. The courtroom was modern, efficient, wood paneling, the seal of the United States behind the judge's bench, fluorescent lighting that made everything look slightly unreal. We sat in the second row, behind the prosecutor's table. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Park was already there, reviewing notes. Early 40s, reputation for being relentless. Weber had said she'd never lost a fraud case. Now she'd add attempted murder to her resume. At 8:55, they brought in the defendants. Elizabeth came first, flanked by U.S. Marshals. Orange jumpsuit, hands shackled, hair unwashed, no makeup. She looked a decade older than she had 3 weeks ago. Her eyes scanned the courtroom, found me, locked on. I saw her mouth form my name, David. I looked away. Mark came next. Same orange jumpsuit, same shackles, but he held his head high, defiant. His attorney, Stephen Harding, sat waiting at the defense table. Expensive suit, expensive briefcase, expensive hourly rate. All of it, probably being paid with money stolen from my business. Richard Holmes was last, the lawyer brother who drafted forged documents. He looked physically ill, gray-faced, sweating despite the air conditioning. His attorney was a woman I didn't recognize, probably someone from his firm doing damage control. They sat at the defense table. 3 people who'd conspired to kill me and steal everything I'd built. 3 people who'd failed. At 9 o'clock exactly, the bailiff called, "All rise." The United States District Court for the Southern District of California is now in session. The Honorable Patricia Morrison presiding. Judge Morrison was 60s, white hair, sharp eyes behind reading glasses. She took her seat and surveyed the courtroom with an expression that suggested she'd seen every kind of human depravity and wasn't impressed by any of it. "Be seated. We're here for arraignment in United States versus Coleman, Thornton, and Holmes. Counsel, enter your appearances." Jennifer Park stood. "Jennifer Park for the United States, Your Honor." The defense attorneys followed. Stephen Harding for Mark, Patricia Valdez for Elizabeth, the same attorney from the emergency hearing. Margaret Chen for Richard. Judge Morrison looked at the defendants. "Elizabeth Marie Coleman, Mark Stephen Thornton, Richard James Holmes. You've been charged with multiple federal offenses. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder. These are serious charges carrying potential life sentences. Do you understand the charges against you?" Elizabeth was crying silently. Valdez answered for her. "Yes, Your Honor, she understands." Mark spoke for himself. "I understand, Your Honor." Voice steady, still performing confidence. Richard could barely whisper. "Yes, Your Honor." "How do you plead?" "Not guilty," all 3 attorneys said in unison. Standard procedure. No one pleads guilty at arraignment. "Bail hearing," Judge Morrison said, turning to her computer. "Ms. Park, the government's position?" Jennifer Park stood again. "Your Honor, the United States requests all 3 defendants be held without bail. These are sophisticated, calculated crimes that required months of planning and execution." The defendants stole nearly $900,000 from Mr. Coleman's business using complex offshore structures. They forged legal documents. And most seriously, they attempted to murder Mr. Coleman using pharmaceuticals, digoxin and ephedrine, administered over several days in doses calculated to trigger a fatal cardiac event. She pulled up documents on the screen visible to the judge. "Dr. Sarah Brennan, a forensic cardiologist, has concluded that Mr. Coleman's heart attack was not natural, but was induced by toxic levels of these substances. The defendants had means, motive, and opportunity. Mr. Coleman nearly died. These are dangerous individuals who, if released, pose a flight risk and a continued danger to the victim." Judge Morrison looked at the defense table. Response? Valdez stood. "Your Honor, Mrs. Coleman has lived in San Diego for 35 years. She has deep community ties, no criminal record, and no history of violence. The government's theory about poisoning is speculative at best. Correlation is not causation. Mr. Coleman had multiple cardiac risk factors. Counselor, Judge Morrison interrupted. I've read Dr. Brennan's report. Toxic levels of digoxin and ephedrine. Your client's husband was never prescribed digoxin. How did it get in his system? Valdez hesitated. There could be multiple explanations. Name one that doesn't involve deliberate administration. Silence. That's what I thought. Mr. Harding, your client's position. Mark's attorney stood. Your Honor, Mr. Thornton is also a lifelong San Diego resident, successful businessman, no prior criminal record. While the financial transactions are concerning and will be addressed at trial, the attempted murder charge is based entirely on circumstantial evidence. He was present when Mr. Coleman collapsed, called 911, potentially saved his life. That's not the action of someone trying to commit murder, unless he was making sure the poison had done its work and establishing himself as the concerned friend, Park interjected. The 911 call gave Mr. Thornton plausible deniability, while ensuring Mr. Coleman reached the hospital if the dose hadn't been fatal. Either way, he wins. Mr. Coleman dies naturally, or survives, and Mr. Thornton looks like a hero. Judge Morrison made notes. Ms. Chen, Mr. Holmes's position. Richard's attorney stood. Your Honor, Mr. Holmes is an attorney with a practice in this community. He has no prior record, strong community ties, and minimal involvement in the alleged conspiracy. He drafted documents at his sister's request, believing them to be legitimate estate planning. He had no knowledge of any poisoning or murder attempt. Bail with electronic monitoring would be appropriate. He drafted forged documents while his brother-in-law was unconscious and dying. Park countered. He knew exactly what he was doing. He's a lawyer. He understood that presenting those documents for notarization was fraud, and he stands to benefit from the estate plan he created if Mr. Coleman had died. Judge Morrison removed her glasses, looked at the three defendants. Here's what I see.
Nearly $900,000 stolen over 2 years, complex offshore structures requiring significant planning and sophistication, forged legal documents, and credible forensic evidence that someone poisoned Mr.
Coleman with substances known to trigger cardiac events. Whether all three defendants were directly involved in the poisoning or just the financial fraud, they all participated in a conspiracy that resulted in a near-fatal heart attack. She put her glasses back on. All three defendants are remanded without bail pending trial. Flight risk and danger to the victim are both substantial. Trial date will be set at status conference in 30 days. The gavel came down. Elizabeth collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Mark's face remained impassive, but I saw his hands clench. Richard put his head on the table. The marshals moved to escort them out. Elizabeth turned, found me again. David, please! Her voice carried across the courtroom. Please, this is insane. I would never… Mrs. Coleman, no contact with the victim, Judge Morrison said sharply. Marshal, remove the defendants. They were led out through a side door. Elizabeth still crying. Mark silent. Richard stumbling. 3 people who'd tried to destroy me, now facing the destruction of their own lives. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication, no pity, just emptiness. Outside the courtroom, Peter pulled me aside. No bail is huge. That means the judge believes the evidence is strong and they're dangerous. It also means they'll have time to think about their situations. Sitting in jail for months waiting for trial, that's when people start making deals. I don't want deals. David, if one of them offers testimony against the others in exchange for reduced charges. I said no deals. They all go down, Peter. All 3 of them. Maximum sentences. He studied my face. Okay, I'll communicate that to the U.S. Attorney's office. But David, you should prepare yourself. Trials are unpredictable. Even with strong evidence, juries can be swayed. There's always risk. Then we make the evidence stronger, whatever it takes. Jennifer Park approached, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Mr. Coleman, could we speak for a moment? We moved to a quiet corner. Thomas stood guard, watching for media. That went well, Park said. Judge Morrison is tough but fair. No bail means she sees what we see. Dangerous defendants who nearly succeeded in killing someone. She pulled out her phone, showed me her calendar. Trial is tentatively set for 6 months out. Between now and then, we'll be deposing witnesses, securing expert testimony, building the timeline. I'll need you available for preparation sessions. This is going to be intensive. I'll be available. Good, Mr. Coleman, I want to be clear about something. This case is solid. We have financial records, recordings, forensic evidence of poisoning, but attempted murder cases are always challenging.
We have to prove intent, that they deliberately gave you those substances intending to cause your death. Defense will argue it could have been accidental exposure, contaminated supplements, medical error.
We need you prepared for aggressive cross-examination. I'm prepared. She nodded. We'll also be calling Jason Coleman as a witness. His testimony about the offshore accounts, the planning, the timeline, it's crucial. I know that's difficult. Use him. I don't care. Whatever convicts them. Something flickered in her eyes. Sympathy, maybe. Mr. Coleman, I've prosecuted a lot of cases. Fraud, embezzlement, white-collar crime.
But attempted murder within a family, especially a long-term marriage, that's different. The emotional toll is significant. Have you considered counseling?
Support groups for victims of domestic violence. My wife tried to poison me to death so she could steal my business. I'm past counseling, Ms. Park. I'm focused on justice. Justice and healing aren't mutually exclusive. After the trial, after they're convicted, then I'll think about healing. We left through the side exit, avoiding the media still camped on the front steps. But one reporter must have been tipped off. She appeared as we reached Peter's car. Microphone extended. Mr. Coleman, Sandra Martinez, Channel 8 News. How do you feel knowing your wife is in jail for trying to murder you? Thomas stepped between us. No comment. Mr. Coleman, did you suspect your wife was having an affair? Did you know about the stolen money? When did you realize she was trying to kill you? Peter opened the car door. Ms. Martinez, Mr. Coleman has no statement at this time. All questions should be directed to the U.S. Attorney's Office. We got in the car. The reporter kept shouting questions through the closed window. Thomas drove away, his hands tight on the wheel. Vultures, he muttered. They're just doing their job, I said. The story sells. Betrayed husband, murderous wife, nearly $1 million. It's sensational. It's your life. It was my life. Now it's a case number. United States versus Coleman, Thornton, and Holmes. Just another federal prosecution. We drove in silence back to my apartment. The security guard Peter had hired, retired SDPD detective named Marcus Chen, nodded as we entered. He'd been there since the arrests. Extra precaution. Even though Elizabeth and Mark were locked up, there were still unknowns. Other people possibly involved. Richard's law partner who might have helped with documents. Business associates who might have turned a blind eye to suspicious transactions. Trust no one. That had become my operating principle. Inside the apartment, Thomas made coffee from sealed packages we'd bought ourselves. Brewed in a machine Marcus had inspected. Paranoia or prudence. The line had blurred. What happens now? Thomas asked, handing me a cup. We wait. 6 months until trial. I rebuild the business, recover physically, prepare to testify. I sipped the coffee. It tasted like ashes. Everything tasted like ashes lately. The U.S. Attorney's Office will interview me dozens of times preparing. Defense attorneys will try to depose me, pick apart my story. Media will camp outside wanting statements. And somewhere in federal detention, 3 people I used to love will sit in cells thinking about what they did. Do you think they regret it? Elizabeth? Maybe. She's not built for jail. Mark? No, he's a sociopath. He regrets getting caught, not what he did. Richard? Probably. He was always the weak one. He got pulled into his sister's scheme and now his life is destroyed. My phone buzzed. Email from Peter. Judge signed order freezing all offshore accounts.
Full asset recovery proceedings begin next week. You'll get your money back, David. All of it, plus interest. $893,000.
I'd get it back eventually, once the lawyers finished fighting over jurisdiction and recovery proceedings. Money that had been mine, stolen, hidden, and now recovered. It didn't matter. No amount of money would undo what they'd done, would erase the knowledge that my wife had spent 3 years sleeping with my business partner.